today that he was from the Rashideh camp in Lebanon, but has not yet confirmed the names of any other family members involved. Police say 4 people were pulled from the water near Shurem by Sea after a major emergency response involving paramedics, Coast Guard crews and a lifeboat. A woman and a teenage girl were also pronounced dead, while a younger girl remains critically ill in hospital. Prime Minister Andy Burnham has called it a terrible family tragedy and warned about the dangers of open water swimming. In other news, Andy Burnham says he wants to get everyone in for Christmas, promising every rough sleeper the offer of a bed before the end of the year. The Prime Minister is trying to revive the spirit of the pandemic-era Everyone In scheme, which helped thousands of rough sleepers off the streets. He's announced another £100 million for emergency accommodation and support, taking the total package to more than £440 million. He says the aim is to offer emergency accommodation, health support and help to rebuild lives. But the Conservatives say the pledge lacks a delivery plan, while homelessness charities say longer-term support is still needed. Well, speaking after the announcement earlier today, Andy Burnham insisted the money will be enough, but he admits that charities, councils and faith groups will also need to pull together.
I feel very passionately about this. I spoke in Downing Street when I came into office about putting a care for people at the heart of everything that we do, and that can't be done and if you've got people who've just got nowhere to go and are left sleeping in the streets. In this country, I don't think, in this day and age, anybody should be forced to sleep rough. And actually, when you do leave people sleeping rough, it can often cost more to the state because people can be in and out of A&E and in and out of hospital beds and sometimes in contact with the police. It's just the right thing to do.
Elsewhere in politics today, the Conservatives have claimed that households could save around £540 a year if net zero electricity rules are scrapped. The Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho says that Britain needs to prioritise cheap electricity over renewable targets. She says the Tories would remove carbon taxes, scrap wind subsidies and reduce the need for new pylons and cables covering the countryside. They also say their plan would still leave Britain with electricity that is almost 80% clean, but at a much lower cost. Well, making that announcement today, Claire Coutinho said that expensive power is hitting living standards hard.
Prove to me that renewables are cheap. Like all of you, I'd heard people saying that for years. But to my astonishment, they could not prove it. Our entire energy policy was based on this promise that all this wind and solar was going to cut bills. And yet, when I combed through the spreadsheets put in front of me, I realised that they didn't have the evidence there to back it up. The truth is that too much wind and solar creates all of these extra hidden costs. It's like a Ryanair flight. The ticket might look cheap, but once you've paid for a bag, a seat and a sandwich, you realise you've been stung.
Meanwhile, higher gas bills have pushed UK inflation back up to 2.9%. That is the highest level for 4 months. The rate rose in the year to July, up from 2.6% the month before. The Office for National Statistics says the increase was driven by the sharpest rise in gas prices for almost 4 years, and after the household energy price cap went up in July. The Chancellor, John Healey, says the Iran war's inflation is still affecting prices here at home, but insists that Britain's economy remains resilient. And in Scotland, an urgent manhunt is underway after 2 men were found stabbed to death inside a flat in Glasgow. Paul Lafferty, who was 50, and 54-year-old Gary Beatson were discovered at a property in Partick on Sunday afternoon. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene and police have now launched a double murder investigation. Detectives believe a knife was used and say they are keeping an open mind over one person or whether more than one person were involved in the attack. Those are the 3 o'clock headlines. Back to Martin shortly. First, though, a quick look at the markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Just gone 8 minutes past 3, the markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.36 and 1.17 euros. The price of gold is £3,258 and the FTSE 100 is at 10,750 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, a bombshell poll published today has shown that the British public are so fed up with the French, and who can blame them? They want Britain to go to diplomatic war to stop the boats. Now, the survey conducted by the pollster YouGov has found that 41% of Brits believe the UK is more likely to solve the migrant crisis by standing up more forcefully to France. Now, this comes as the French politician in charge of the area around Calais has demanded British taxpayers cough up even more cash. They want more money to send across the Channel to tackle the migrant crisis. Now, meanwhile, Open Borders' Ed Davey is calling for the UK to get closer to the European Union and join their new migration and asylum pact. So here's the question. Is it time to wage a diplomatic war on France? And on top of that, new data published today has shown a record 1.3 million migrants were claiming universal credit in May 2026, which cost British taxpayers an eye-watering £11 billion per year, and with an astonishing 44% annual boom in refugees on benefits, costing £1.56 billion last year alone, is going to war with France pointless, so long as attractive benefits make Britain a magnet for the world's poorest. Well, that is one heck of a debate, and I'm joined in the studio by GBNews political correspondent Olivia Utley and GBNews' senior political commentator for 3 hours of tete-a-tete, as they say in France, Nigel Nelson. Olivia, let's start with you. Let's start with this poll. A fascinating insight into Brits. So just sick to the back teeth of watching the mega dinghies chunder across the Channel almost inexorably. 41% want confrontation versus only 35% who want more cooperation.
I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Yes, it's a fascinating poll, and it shows the completely shifting attitudes of the British towards the French. When Rishi Sunak signed that deal in 2023, handing money over to the French police to allow them to patrol their borders, that actually went down really well with the British public. It polled excellently. When Shabana Mahmood agreed a similar deal just a few months ago worth £600 million, still just about a majority of the British public were on board with it. In the few months since then, that support has essentially unravelled, and now we're seeing that more Brits than not would like Britain to go to diplomatic war with the French. What is so interesting about this is that it plays so neatly into Reform's strategy. Now, at a press conference a couple of weeks ago, Reform came up with the policy, new policy, that anyone who is found coming over the Channel in a small boat would be sent back by the Royal Navy. They would use the Royal Navy to French beaches. Now, the obvious question from journalists was, well, what would happen if the French don't take them back? What would happen when the French don't take them back? Because all of the evidence we've got shows that the French aren't particularly happy to accept back migrants who've come over to British shores. Now, Zia Yousaf's answer to that question was, well, we'd send them anyway, to which the obvious comeback is, well, would that mean war with the French? Reform didn't quite have an answer to that question, but it sounds as though the public wouldn't particularly mind if we did have some sort of diplomatic furore with the French over this. It does sound as though the public are ready for what Reform is offering. Diplomatically, could something like that actually work? How far would the UK go with this? I think what was in the sort of, if you're reading between the lines of this Reform policy, what it depends on is a new regime in France, a new government in France, which we are expecting next year, having a very, very different outlook to President Macron. If the National Rally Party got in, you could end up in a situation where there is a government in France a little bit more sympathetic to that kind of idea. I think that is what the Reform policy is relying on, rather than the more bullish idea from Zia Yousaf that we could go to some kind of diplomatic confrontation with the French.
Another poll published yesterday, well, the universal credit data came out, and, you know, I find myself, I agree with Xavier Bertrand. He's the regional president of Hauts de France. That's the area where all of the dinghies are leaving from. He's saying that Britain is a permanent attraction to illegal immigrants, and the data yesterday, Olivia, seems to underline that. A 44% increase in refugees claiming universal credit. Now, not everybody on that list is an asylum seeker or came here on a dinghy, but everybody who came here on a dinghy ends up claiming asylum, and a great portion of them make up some of that 44% increase, and that's the point. So long as benefits await people who take the risky journey, £1,000 a month. Well, if you're paying a couple of grand to get here on a dinghy, the British state pays you back in 2 months. The French president of the area has a point. We are a magnet for the world's poorest.
It's fascinating because so many Brexiteers like you who I've spoken to in British politics are completely aligned with the French government, with the Italian government, with pretty much any government in Europe on this question. Europeans are tearing their hair out on the continent because they believe that Britain is a magnet for the French, and to get to Britain, these migrants have to travel through France, sometimes Belgium, etc., bringing migrants into their countries. That is because they believe that we have a sort of not enough stick and too much carrot, if you like, that we are attracting migrants over here with a generous benefit policy. Now, there were some statistics last week about the number of refugees, those who've actually claimed asylum, not those who have come over in small boats and are awaiting a decision, who end up in social housing. The number is about 10% of social housing is for people who consider themselves refugees. That is also a pretty high percentage, 10% of social housing, when you consider the amount that the waiting list for social housing is about 100 years long. And without quick planning changes, it's not going to get any shorter. So there is this big question, are we becoming too much of a magnet for migrants here in the UK? The Labour government would say no. Shabana Mahmood has pushed back very, very hard against this accusation. And as far as she is concerned, she is doing everything within her power. And there are those actually within the Conservative backbenchers who think that she's actually doing a pretty good job within the constraints and parameters allowed her.
OK, thank you very much, Olivia Utley. Let's get my next guest now. He knows a lot about this. That's the former Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, John Vine. John, Britain, in a sense, is caught in this deadly pincer movement. You know, we're sending £600 million a year to the French. It's not working. And now this politician, Xavier Bertrand, he wants more money to do the job. But he has a point, does he not? So long as there's a chance of getting universal credit when you come over to be an asylum seeker, a 44% increase in 1 year, John Vine, that's a continual pull factor that will always mean that they will take that deadly journey if Hotel Britannia is going to cough up so many riches for them.
Well, he does have a point, Martin, and this reflects what... Do you remember when President Macron came over and had a meeting with Keir Starmer about a year ago? What Macron said is that the British need to do more to actually deter people from coming to Britain and, you know, all the pull factors, you know, the grey economy, the fact that organised crime can easily fix people up with jobs, the benefits and all the rest of it. And... what Bertrand is saying is that he actually linked it with the Le Touquet Treaty. This was the treaty in 2003 that created, you know, enabled the British to actually check people on French soil and the French to check people on British soil. And it's really dangerous. What he was saying is that, you know, unless Britain gets its act together and can show that to the French that they're actually cracking down on illegal migration, he's advocating that the Le Touquet agreement is suspended. Now, that's always been a factor in the background of that agreement. It was way ahead of its time. But if we actually had a diplomatic row with France and they suspended the Le Touquet agreement, what we could be having then is nobody checked at all before they arrive on British soil, and everybody arriving on British soil claiming asylum. So the asylum figures will go through the roof.
John Vine, the British public are clearly at the end of their tether with this continual, a lot of them consider it an invasion of our shores. The poll out today by YouGov, I think, it's a country at breaking point. 41% stand up to the French. They want confrontation. Only 35% want closer cooperation. And as I said, 79% of reform voters want a confrontation with France. 67% of Tories. But the problem is, if we defund the French, if we go to war with them diplomatically, they could, as you say, just refuse to do their job. And perhaps actually the British public's anger should be with the British government. Because so long as there is this continual magnetic effect to the world's poorest, we're never going to stop Le Boat.
Well, is the government trying to stop the boats? I mean, it's saying that the arrivals are down by 40%, but nobody cares about the figures. What the optics are telling us all the time, when you show, and other media channels show, taxi boats, people scrambling to get on boats and coming over to Britain in these mega boats now, 200 and 250 people. That's what people see. So the optics of what's happening is actually countering, and more than countering, what the government is trying to do. And so I think the UK government is struggling to keep pace with public opinion, as behind the curve when it comes to public opinion on this issue.
Now, John Vine, fret ye not, because Ed Davey's got a plan. He's coming over on his paddleboard in the Channel. He's saying the answer is to rejoin the pact with the European Union. Here he was speaking earlier.
And I'm afraid Reform and the Conservatives should hang their heads in shame for having caused this problem and now trying to exploit it. It will ultimately end small boats crossings because it would break the business model of the people smugglers, the human traffickers. And until we break that model, I'm afraid they'll continue.
So the Liberal Democrats there proposing a pact, of course. This is during the EU's Migration and Asylum Pact. Now, John, can you just tell our viewers and listeners why this is just a ridiculous idea? It's expensive and it won't work.
Well, it means that we would have to take our fair share of whatever the European Union decided, was our fair share of people, who would inevitably come to Britain. Now, I don't know the detail of this arrangement, but it strikes me that, having taken back power over our own borders, at least in theory, we need to try and keep it rather than hand it over to someone else again. At the end of the day, it's up to each individual nation state to secure its borders, and we need to do that to the best of our ability.
John, I do know the details. Let's share it with our viewers and listeners now. If you join this migration pact, it means that you must accept the European Union-wide baseline of 30,000 relocated asylum seekers. And the European Union gets to choose who comes to our shores, and it'll ostensibly be people who can join families. 30,000. That's what you would need to take in. And if you could deport 30,000 or less, well, you'd only be net zero. There's a fine of €20,000 for each relocation not taken to join the scheme at all. Costs 600 million euros. That's what Norway pays. That's what Switzerland pays. It's expensive. It's a one-in, one-out deal. It's a complete and utter false dawn. And actually, I think Ed Davey should be the one hanging his head in shame, blatantly cozying up to the European Union and Brussels when it would have no impact on stopping the boats.
Well, the other factor to bear in mind is it's limited to a number. Once that quota, a number, is achieved, what happens to then the people who still want to come to the UK, who are out with that annual figure? So, far from it breaking the business model of organised crime, the organised crime won't go away as long as the demand is there. The key, as I've said repeatedly before, is to try and have a way of deterring people from actually coming here and staying here in the first place. Unless that nettle is grasped by somebody and somebody comes up with a bright idea as to how to do that politically, then we'll keep talking about the consequences of not having a policy in place.
OK, John Vine, always a pleasure to get your expertise. It sincerely is. The former Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, John Vine, thank you. And mind how you go. Back to the studio, Nigel Nelson. We have got the most atrocious mess. Nobody seems to know how to solve this. The British public's patience is running out. They want a diplomatic war with the French.
Well, they might do. It's one of the reasons we don't do government by opinion poll, because opinion polls change as the facts change. But first of all, if the people smugglers are talking about getting benefits here as a way of attracting business, that's misinformation. What asylum seekers...
What are you talking about? There's a 44% increase in refugees getting universal credit yesterday. today?
That is refugees once they've got refugee status. If they're coming over here, what an asylum seeker gets is under £10 if they're a week if they're living in a hotel.
Then they're granted refugee status, and the net result. Look at the screen. The figures don't lie. 1.56
I'm not suggesting the figures do lie. Once they've got refugee status, that is a different ballgame. They then have settled status in this country. There is a bill going through Parliament, the new immigration bill at the moment that Labour's bringing in. What they will have to do before they get settled status is pay back that asylum support that we've given them.
If it gets voted through.
Well, I think that probably...
Do you think it will?
I think that will get voted through, yeah. But I think that the issue with Shabana Mahmood is over the retrospective element of her immigration plans. That's what Labour MPs are angry about. Something like this will get through. This is for people in the future.
Well, I'll tell you what, this chaos in the Channel, it sunk Sunak, it shattered Starmer, and I think it's going to torpedo Andy Burnham. Unless he gets a grip, this will completely consume this government, as it did those before. We have to move on. Olivia Utley, superb, Nigel Nelson, plenty more of this throughout the rest of the show, of course. Now, still to come, Keir Starmer spent so long U-turning, he became known as Sir Fence-Sitter. Will the same happen to Andy Burnham? Is he following in the same flip-flops as Sir Flip-Flop? This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
Oh, thank you. And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 3:28 your time. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, it's often joked that Sir Keir Starmer had more positions in politics than the Kama Sutra. But in the end, after trying to please the uneasy bedfellows of the loveless left and the restless right, Labour kicked him out of bed. But already, does Andy Burnham's premiership promise us more flip-flops down a Benidorm beach bar? Because on North Sea Oil, how many times have we believed Burnham was going to channel his inner Trump and...
We will drill, baby, drill.
But on Monday, the Prime Minister announced he would delay the decision due to the optics of embracing fossil fuels. And remember when Andy Burnham said this?
Heard on so many doorsteps people's concerns about the unfairness of the immigration system, that cut price approach to procurement that means areas like this can end up like HMO Britain. It's not fair that they think that they can just operate like that and not hear the call of people here.
HMO Britain, not fair. Yet, when speaking to GB News' political editor Chris Hope, he said everyone needs to take their fair share of immigrants.
I do believe all parts of the country need to work to play their part. It's a challenging issue. We're working at it. We understand people's concerns, and I will look into the issues raised by the good people of Piddington.
And then there's early release, because Andy Burnham also posted on Facebook in early August that there was nothing more he could do to interfere with the early release scheme without risking the collapse of the prison system. But now he says he's completely changed his mind. He is confident the PC Andrew Harper's killers can be excluded from that scheme.
The proposal will be to find new ways of freeing up space within the prison system so that we do not have to release offenders early, and particularly the most serious offenders like those involved in the killing of PC Andrew Harper. So I am confident that there is more that can be done.
And what about stopping those mega dingers? Well, at present, we have a Prime Minister who seems to be busier faffing around with buses and barbecues. Well, Keir Starmer's indecision led to this legendary meme. Look at him. He's there as the ultimate fence-sitter to Keir Starmer with more splinters in his backside. But might Prime Minister Burnham take that crown and win the premiership that will surely evade his beloved Everton and become known as the king of fence-sitters? I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Olivia, there is absolutely a whiff here of a public wanting conviction, wanting confidence, wanting decisions that take bravery and competence, and instead we're getting faffing around and sitting on the fence.
Well, I think there are two very different ways of looking at this, depending on whether you are an Andy Burnham fan or not. I'll go with those who are supportive of Andy Burnham first and say that I think you could argue that Andy Burnham clearly has his finger on the sort of political pulse far, far more than Keir Starmer ever did. And Keir Starmer's mistake wasn't so much, maybe I'll sound a bit cynical here, but it wasn't so much making U-turns. It was that he waited so long before he made the U-turn when the whole of the Westminster establishment were all saying he is going to have to change his mind on, for example, winter fuel cuts or welfare reform. He didn't realise that he had to do something about it until it was almost too late. Now, Andy Burnham is more of a savvy operator, and he will show that he is not quite sure about something, and he will climb down much before the moment that Keir Starmer would. I think the perfect example of this is the early release scheme. At first, he was saying that he did want to release the killers of, not want to, but felt that he had to release the killers of PC Andrew Harper. Then he said that it wouldn't be possible. And then just a couple of days later, after seeing that public backlash, he said that actually there would be some sort of way, and he urged the Justice Secretary, Alex Norris, to work on it. And that is now being done. I think Andy Burnham's supporters will say that the way he is agile, he is nimble, he's got his finger on the political pulse, and that means that he is able to change his mind quickly when the circumstances change. But, of course, his critics would say that those issues pile up and you start to get the impression of a man who is trying to please everyone and can't please anyone.
Nigel Nelson, that's the point. You cannot walk a tightrope as a Prime Minister in the end without falling off. You know, people want action. The country's on its knees. We're bankrupt. We're $3 trillion. We're going down the toilet. We can't stop the boats. We can't stop universal credit going up. The country is at a precipice. We don't want more sitting on the fence.
Well, hang on. It's not action you want, it's the right decisions you want. And not always do they come absolutely immediately. So, I mean, Olivia just mentioned Keir Starmer's original mistake when he was first Prime Minister of denying pensioners their winter fuel allowance. Just a mistake. Andy Burnham is trying not to make mistakes. So take prison release. When it comes down to Andrew Harper's killers, when the whole scheme started, that wasn't in the frame. Now he's discovering the complexities of government when suddenly that is in the frame. People are rightfully...
politics by a focus group.
Well,
wait for everything to blow up in your face
because
before
you
you
don't
make the
know.
right decision.
When you're
clearly the wrong decision to let these scumbags out of jail.
No, when you're trying to make a decision, when you're trying to form policy, there are always unintended consequences that flow from it. What you have to do is try and anticipate them, and if they hit you between the eyes, which is what the PC Andrew Harper's killers did, then you've got to take your time to work out how you do it and do it fairly.
OK, well, we've got 2 weeks to go till Parliament returns, and, you know, the Prime Minister is going to have to hit the ground running. Olivia Udley, superb. Nigel Nelson, thank you once again. Now, don't go anywhere, because still to come, the Home Office has been accused of being scared of scrutiny over one of Europe's biggest immigration detention centres. We'll be speaking to a councillor there who says they were completely overruled by the Home Office. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. 3:30, the headlines. A father who died alongside two family members off of the Sussex coast has now been named as Palestinian refugee Hossam al-Hawass. A woman and a teenage girl also died after the family got into difficulty in the water near Shoreham by Sea. A younger girl remains in critical condition in hospital. Prime Minister Andy Burnham's promised every rough sleeper the offer of a bed by Christmas. He's announced a total package of more than £440 million for emergency accommodation, but admits that charities, councils and faith groups will also need to pull together. Homelessness charities say longer-term support is still needed, though. The Conservatives claim that households could save £540 a year if net zero electricity rules are scrapped. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho says that the government should put cheaper power ahead of a grid dominated by wind and solar. And that comes as higher gas bills have pushed UK inflation back up to 2.9%, the highest level for 4 months. The rise was widely expected, but the ONS says that the increase was driven by the sharpest rise in gas prices for almost 4 years. And in Scotland, an urgent manhunt's underway after 2 men were found stabbed to death inside a flat in Glasgow. Paul Lafferty and Gary Beatson were discovered with serious injuries at a property in Partick on Sunday. Detectives believe a knife was used. Those are the half-past headlines. A full roundup from me at 4.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Further showers across more northern areas through the rest of today. A little bit brighter further south after quite a wet start to the day. That weather front from this morning has moved further south and east. Behind it, we've got further weather fronts that will bring more showery rain thanks to this area of low pressure through the rest of today and into Thursday as well. Some of these showers could bring some impacts because they bring a risk of thunderstorms with hail and lightning to parts of Northern Ireland and eastern Scotland, and later tonight into tomorrow morning across parts of North Wales and northern England. Elsewhere, there's a chance of a showery outbreak of rain overnight. Temperatures relatively mild for the time of year across more southern areas, a little bit fresher to start the day across the far north of Scotland in particular, because we've got quite a brisk northerly wind into Thursday morning, particularly across north and eastern coastal areas, so you will really notice that breeze. Further west, the winds will be a little bit lighter, but there's quite a lot of cloud to start the day on Thursday and further showers through the morning. Now through Thursday, not going to be quite as frequent across more northern areas, but through the morning across North Wales, northern England, that's where we'll see the most frequent and heaviest downpours. More southern and eastern areas of England will likely be fairly dry to start the day, but some of these showers could push further south and east into these areas later on by lunchtime and into the afternoon. Further north, a drier afternoon to come. Some sunny spells breaking through for parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, but still a chance of a few showers as well. Widely a much cooler day on Thursday with more in the way of cloud around. Temperatures below average actually for more northern areas, quite close to average across the south. Showers will tend to ease into Thursday evening as we head towards Friday, as it will be a drier end to the week, and the weekend is looking relatively dry as well as high pressure builds in from the west once again. So more in the way of sunshine, less in the way of rain, but that might not last too long. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M27 is closed at Junction 2 in Romsey. The M23 northbound has an incident at Junction 9 in Gatwick. The A36 is closed after the A30. In Scotland, the M8 westbound is restricted at Junction 15, with 3 lanes affected on the A803 east approach and slips. Across Wales, the M4 westbound from J24 Coldra to J26 Malpas is congested with possible delays. And on the trains, Greater Anglia has major disruption between Shenfield and Southend Victoria. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Home Office has been accused of being scared of scrutiny over one of Europe's biggest immigration detention centres. The leader of Gosport Borough Council, Zoe Huggins, has written to the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. A centre that was closed a decade ago is now set to be reopened and enlarged to house 600 foreign criminals and illegal migrants over 3 stories. Well, Councillor Zoe Huggins of the Conservative Party joins us now. Councillor Huggins, it's a pleasure to have your company. You know, the thing that strikes me about this story, Councillor Huggins, is that Andy Burnham, didn't he say that there'd be more power in local hands, there'd be more devolution for people to decide what's happened in their area, and yet you guys have just had this completely dumped on you from above?
We have, and actually planning is a good example of where it's opposite to what Andy Burnham is saying. And like you say, it's one of the largest in the Europe of the immigration retention centres. It's going through what's called the Crown development process. We're one of the first in the country to go through the Crown development process. And the letter that we wrote to the Home Secretary is actually on the process, not the planning application itself. And our message is really, really clear. Give us a public inquiry, not just written representation. Where possible, make redactions, remove redactions as much as possible, and install a community liaison panel so we can learn from phase 1 and work through and ensure that we hear from the local community.
The trouble with that, though, is that even if they do have a consultation process, they consult you and ignore you. Look what happened at Linton-on-Ouse. Look at Crowborough. Look at RAF Wethersfield. You know, this routinely happens. A central government decision is made. The community finds out when it's a fait accompli. And even when you complain, there's nothing that can be done. There's a feeling, this overriding feeling that everybody has to pay the price and taste the pain for decisions made by central government.
I would agree with you. There's been a consultation process, which is a written representation, and very much you've given examples there where I think that's happened and they've very much been ignored. So our call for a public inquiry is actually that we want the evidence to be tested. And I suppose the headline that we're being quoted is if they're confident about the new Crown development process, if they're confident about the application, we're one of the first, let's be an example and let's actually test that evidence and hear directly from residents from a public inquiry.
But you know what that evidence will be. Like, we can all guess what the evidence would be. Who would want a 3-storey illegal immigrant mega prison in their constituency? The answer is nobody. And that's the point. They can consult all they like, but the residents of your area will just say, no, Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I think the evidence in this letter was not about the planning merit or planning application, but you've given some examples there. I think when we talk about local representation, we're a peninsula, our infrastructure will be affected, so they need to understand that from, as you quote, the mega detention centre, and they need to understand that we have been left behind by the MOD. We have quite a lot of empty sites, and we have deprived areas here in the borough. And quite rightly, residents are concerned about the impact on their housing prices. They're concerned about the local economy, and I'm concerned about, obviously, the opportunities of regeneration in the future of our town.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us. Please stay in touch. We're very, very keen to keep an eye on this case and give you all the publicity that you need. That's very kind of you to join us today, Councillor Zoe Huggins from the Conservative Party. Pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you,
Let's
Martin.
get back to studio. Thank you. My pleasure. Let's get back to studio. Nigel Nelson. This is another example to me of this flip-floppery that we've heard from Andy Burnham. It's all about devolution of power, less Westminster, more regional voices, unless we decide to dump 600 illegal immigrants and foreign prisoners on your constituency under a newly introduced Crown development scheme which completely castrates the power of locals to do anything about it. This is the opposite of power to the people.
Well, first of all, the devolution that Andy Burnham is talking about is fiscal devolution, allowing mayors to be able to spend the taxes raised in their area on their area. This is a real problem. I feel for Zoe, I feel for the residents of Gosport, because there's very little they can do about the Home Office decision. The reason there's nothing they can do about it is because, as you just pointed out to Zoe, every council leader in the country objects to the idea of a migrant detention centre on their patch. Every resident will object to it.
Perhaps that's because they're sick of illegal immigrants coming to the country.
I'm sure they are.
So stop them coming here rather than building swanky new nicks.
But before we get to
swanky new containment centres, stop the boats.
Before we get to the how we stop the boats, we've got to handle
the foreign prisoners.
We're back to the same old argument. Deport them to where?
Where they come from.
Well, if they, it depends first of all, whether that country will accept them back. Secondly, whether we should deport them to a country where they face torture or possibly death. So there are a whole lot of considerations. The important thing here is, what do you do with the people we already have here? The only thing to do is put them in detention centres rather than hotels, which people object to, rather than HMOs that people
object to. Why don't we put them in the constituencies of the parliamentarians who think this is a good idea? Here you go.
Well, I mean,
Jeremy Corbyn, poof, let's take a few in your seat. Or Ed Davey, let's take a few next to you, mate. Let's see how you like it.
Let's take Jeremy Corbyn's seat, Islington. Where would you find an Islington to put an immigration detention centre?
On Jeremy Corbyn's allotment. Nigel Nelson, we have to move on. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Home Office spokesman has told GB News this. All Crown development planning applications require extensive engagement, and we encourage residents and stakeholders to share their views through the formal process. We make no apology for significantly expanding our detention capacity, which will see more than 45,000 additional foreign criminals and illegal migrants removed over the coming decade. Now, coming up next, Queen Camilla has opened up in a rare interview about the King's cancer diagnosis. That's next, but first, here's the forecast for some of your top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's not just the UK where we've seen a change in the weather this week, certainly much cooler across northern and central Europe, with some very lively thunderstorms in places. Now, there are some thunderstorms around on Thursday for eastern parts of Spain into the south of Iberia, for example. But the liveliest downpours and thunderstorms most likely northern Italy into the Alps, and especially around the Italian lakes, where there could be some very significant rain right there through this week and into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I remember it vividly, the first dogfight over Biggin Hill, over New Addington. And this particular morning, the war started. My mother had asked me to go and get her a pint of beer from the... She wasn't a drunk or anything, but she liked to drink on a Sunday morning. So she said, "Oh, son," she said, "go down and get me a bottle of beer, will you?" I mean, all was quiet in the Western Front. So I said, "Yes, Mum." So I'm going down the road now. I hadn't gone quarter of a mile, and all of a sudden there's this confusion, all this noise and that, zooming and banging. I thought, what on earth's that? And I looked up, and there they were, dog fighting over New Addington.
GB News, the People's Channel. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Joining us now is Head of Advocacy at Big Brother Watch, Jack Colson. Jack, interested to know your view on this. You know, why shouldn't I be able to wear my Meta glasses around?
Well, certainly there are times and places where Meta glasses might be of use, particularly for those with visual impairments. The technology really could be a breakthrough, but we see these as the tip of an iceberg. Meta's glasses have already been potentially linked to facial recognition technology, which really would be a stalker's charter. And we are operating in an environment where perpetrators of harassment feel safe to use this technology when really it's the public who ought to feel safe. So the government ultimately are going to have to explore restrictions on this kind of technology, and we're seeing civil society push back.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I have a real treat for you because I have found women. Yes, and these women are badly behaved in Benidorm, and they've been here for... How long have you been here?
Since Tuesday.
Yeah, just a week this time. Normally we do 2 weeks, but just a week this time.
And whereabouts in the UK are you from?
From Surrey.
Surrey. Manchester. Salford.
Doncaster.
Quite the mix, I would say. Are you getting ready to go into the strip?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, why not? It's iconic.
We do culture first and then the strip. That's the right way round, right?
If you say so. Will you be out on the strip?
Most definitely, yet again.
And what's so attractive about it?
What, the strip or the culture?
The strip.
What am I allowed to say on TV?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Queen Camilla has spoken for the first time about the emotional strain of keeping the King's cancer diagnosis secrets from the public before it was announced to the world.
I remember coming to see our Maggie's just after the King being diagnosed. Nobody could say anything at the time. That was quite difficult. I almost said something, but, I felt that it wasn't the time to say. Looked at everybody who was suffering and all the relations, and I think it made me realise even more how important these places were.
Well, joining me now is GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, welcome to the show. Queen Camilla there showing a human side. Many of our viewers and listeners will empathise and understand with being hammered by the diagnosis of cancer, but how hard must it be when that's the King we're talking about?
Well, exactly, Martin. I think that's what the Queen was trying to get across, the fact that this can actually happen to anyone. And she's president of Maggie's. That's a cancer charity which has centres in 24 hospitals around the country, which provides kind of holistic support alongside, of course, the clinical medicine that needs to take place when one's going through cancer. But crucially for both patients and their families. And of course, the Queen going there just 5 days before Buckingham Palace announced that the King had cancer. The Queen was just saying there in that interview, it must have been incredibly hard. But since this interview was coinciding with the 30th anniversary of Maggie's as a charity, and since the King announced publicly that he was diagnosed with cancer, the number of men who have gone to approach Maggie seeking support has actually risen by 12%. So that perhaps shows just how important the King's words and the King's decision to go public with his diagnosis was. And the Queen also talked in that interview there about how the King has been coping with his cancer diagnosis, and that is by keeping calm and carrying on, that great British tradition, and just throwing himself into his public and constitutional work. He only took about 12 weeks off of public duties while he was undergoing that initial cancer treatment. But as we've seen over the last couple of years, Martin, he's done a big tour of Australia and Samoa. I was with him there. I was also with him in the United States, in Washington, D.C., where he managed to persuade Donald Trump to get rid of whiskey tariffs with the United States, boosting millions to the economy. And also just smaller things up at Balmoral and around in the surrounding countryside, supporting local communities and businesses. So I think the Queen wants this to be a positive story of how, Maggie's as the cancer charity can support people around the country.
Hey, Cameron Walker, thank you very, very much for joining us on the show today. I appreciate your time. Nigel Nelson, a quick word from you. The royal family now is very much becoming more open. And I think this is a fascinating insight in how an everyday occurrence is being handled in a very open and humane way.
Yes, so do I. And I can imagine how difficult it was for Queen Camilla to keep that secret. It was also at the time very important to manage how you put the news out publicly. This is a major thing. The fact the King has cancer, that announcement is very difficult, has to be handled carefully. It needs time.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Nigel Nelson. Now, don't go anywhere, because after the break, a bombshell poll published today is showing that the British public is so fed up with the French. They want Britain to go to a full-scale diplomatic war to stop the boats. Some 41% of Brits now just want there to be forceful action against the French, rising to 79% of Reform voters, 3/4 of Conservative voters. But here's the rub, only a quarter of Labour voters want firmer action. That is a political headache for our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, when he returns in a couple of weeks' time. That's next here on GB News, and we're Britain's numero uno news channel. First, though, here's your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Further showers across more northern areas through the rest of today. A little bit brighter further south after quite a wet start to the day. That weather front from this morning has moved further south and east. Behind it, we've got further weather fronts that will bring more showery rain thanks to this area of low pressure through the rest of today and into Thursday as well. Some of these showers could bring some impacts because they bring a risk of thunderstorms with hail and lightning to parts of Northern Ireland and eastern Scotland, and later tonight into tomorrow morning across parts of North Wales and northern England. Elsewhere, there's a chance of a showery outbreak of rain overnight. Temperatures relatively mild for the time of year across more southern areas, a little bit fresher to start the day across the far north of Scotland in particular, because we've got quite a brisk northerly wind into Thursday morning, particularly across north and eastern coastal areas, so you will really notice that breeze. Further west, the winds will be a little bit lighter, but there's quite a lot of cloud to start the day on Thursday and further showers through the morning. Now, through Thursday, not going to be quite as frequent across more northern areas, but through the morning across North Wales, northern England, that's where we'll see the most frequent and heaviest downpours. More southern and eastern areas of England will likely be fairly dry to start the day, but some of these showers could push further south and east into these areas later on by lunchtime and into the afternoon. Further north, a drier afternoon to come, some sunny spells breaking through for parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, but still a chance of a few showers as well. Widely a much cooler day on Thursday with more in the way of cloud around. Temperatures below average actually for more northern areas, quite close to average across the south. Showers will tend to ease into Thursday evening as we head towards Friday, as it will be a drier end to the week, and the weekend is looking relatively dry as well as high pressure builds in from the west once again. So more in the way of sunshine, less in the way of rain, but that might not last too long. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A303 is closed after the A358, and the A36 is closed after the A360. In Scotland, the M8 eastbound has a lane restriction and queue at junction 19 near Kingston Bridge. Across Wales, the A4232 northbound from St Fagans to M4 J33 Capel Llanelturn is congested with possible delays. And on the trains, Greater Anglia has major disruption between Shenfield and Southend Victoria, while East Midlands Railway has a temporary reduced timetable and disruption between Cleethorpes and Barton-on-Humber. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win over £65,000 in prizes.
You could be our latest Great British Giveaway winner.
First of all, we want to give you
£60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also receive a fine gold bar worth over £5,000.
For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. Thank you for your company and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you faithfully as ever until 6. A cracking show awaits, and here's what's on today's menu. Top story today, a bombshell poll published today has shown that the British public are so fed up with the French, and who can blame them? They want Britain to go to diplomatic war to stop Le Boat, with 41% demanding tougher action, rising to 79% of Reform UK voters. Is it time to defund the French and say mais non to Monsieur Macron? And damning data also published today has also shown a record 1.3 million immigrants are claiming universal credits, costing British taxpayers an incredible £11 billion per year, with an astonishing 44% boom in refugees costing $1.56 billion. Is there any wonder the dinghies keep coming over the channel when handouts and free houses are magnetising those mega dinghies all the way to Hotel Britannia? And the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, look at him. He suggested Britain should join the European Union's Migration and Asylum Pact, adding Farage and the Conservatives should hang their heads in shame. But critics have pointed out that the EU scheme could cost Britain £500 million a year and force us to take back European Union asylum seekers. Has Ed Davey become open borders Ed? Now, Keir Starmer spent so long U-turning and sitting on the fence as Prime Minister, he earned the nickname Sir Fence Sitter. But is Andy Burnham following in Sir Keir's flip-flop footsteps with policy U-turns on HMOs, North Sea oil and the release of PC Andrew Harper's killers? Might Andy Burnham surpass even Sir Keir? Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Yesterday on the show, we were saying it's time for a diplomatic war with Pakistan. Take back Shabir Ahmed, the paedophile who was in charge of the Rochdale rape gang, because they were fed up of being shoved around by Pakistan. Take back your garbage. Today, the British public are expressing their fury with France, 41% of the entire electorate saying it's time to be more forceful to stop le boats versus 35% who want a closer relationship with France. This is a huge problem for the Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. The voters are completely split. Let's get more aggressive, say the right. Let's cosy up to the French, say the left. Where does Andy Burnham sit on that fence? Would he be destined to tightrope act his way through Parliament, just like Sir Keir Starmer? And remember how that ended? The Prime Minister fell off into oblivion. Do you think that could happen to Andy Burnham? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so, or scan the QR code on your screens now. But enough from me. Here's your headlines. It's Monsieur Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 4 o'clock, well, we start this hour with some more breaking developments on the case in Shoreham, where police have now named all 3 family members who died after getting into difficulty off the coast there. Hassan El Kawas, who was 55, his 37-year-old partner Zaina Alian and their 14-year-old daughter Sarah El Kawas have been pulled from the water on Tuesday afternoon. A younger girl from the same family, we understand, remains in hospital in critical condition. Sussex police say their investigation remains open at this stage, but after reviewing CCTV footage and initial witness accounts, their current understanding is that it was a tragic accident with no third-party involvement. The Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has also called it a terrible family tragedy and warned about the dangers of open water swimming. Well, in other news today, Andy Burnham has said that he wants to get everyone in for Christmas. He's promising every rough sleeper the offer of a bed before the end of the year. Let's take a listen to what he had to say earlier.
I feel very passionately about this. I spoke in Downing Street when I came into office about putting a care for people at the heart of everything that we do, and that can't be done and if you've got people who've just got nowhere to go and are left sleeping in the streets. In this country, I don't think in this day and age anybody should be forced to sleep rough. And actually, when you do leave people sleeping rough, it can often cost more to the state because people can be in and out of A&E and in and out of hospital beds and sometimes in contact with the police. It's just the right thing to do.
Andy Burnham there speaking earlier following that announcement. He is trying, he says, to revive the spirit of the pandemic-era Everyone In scheme, which helped thousands of rough sleepers off the streets. To do that, he's announced another £100 million for emergency accommodation and support, taking the total package to more than £440 million. He says the aim is to offer that emergency accommodation along with health support and help to rebuild lives. The Conservatives, though, say the package lacks a delivery plan, while homeless charities say longer-term support will still be needed. The Conservatives have claimed that households could save around £540 a year if net zero electricity rules are scrapped. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho says that Britain needs to produce and prioritise cheap electricity over renewable targets. She says her party would remove carbon taxes, scrap wind subsidies and reduce the need for new pylons and cables covering the countryside. The Tories say that plan would still leave Britain with electricity that is almost 80% clean, but at a much lower cost. Well, making that announcement earlier, Claire Coutinho said that expensive power is hitting living standards hard.
Prove to me that renewables are cheap. Like all of you, I'd heard people saying that for years. But to my astonishment, they could not prove it. Our entire energy policy was based on this promise that all this wind and solar was going to cut bills. And yet, when I combed through the spreadsheets put in front of me, I realised that they didn't have the evidence there to back it up. The truth is that too much wind and solar creates all of these extra hidden costs. It's like a Ryanair flight. The ticket might look cheap, but once you've paid for a bag, a seat and a sandwich, you realise you've been stung.
That comes as higher gas bills have pushed UK inflation back up to 2.9%. That is the highest level in 4 months. The rate rose in the year to July, up from 2.6% the month before. The Office for National Statistics says that increase was driven by the sharpest rise in gas prices for almost 4 years, after the household energy price cap went up. The Chancellor, John Healey, says Iran war inflation is still affecting prices here at home, but insists Britain's economy remains resilient. And briefly, to news in Scotland, where an urgent manhunt is now underway after 2 men were found stabbed to death inside a flat in Glasgow. Paul Lafferty, who was 50, and 54-year-old Gary Beatson were discovered at a property in Partick on Sunday afternoon. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene, police now launching a double murder investigation. Detectives say they believe a knife was used in the attack and are keeping an open mind over whether one person or more than one may have been involved. That is the news on GB News. I'll be back with you shortly. Next, though, a look at the markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Just gone 8 minutes past 4. The markets for you. The pound will buy $1.36 and 1.17 euros. The price of gold is at £3,258 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 10,750 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Thank you, Sam. Is it time to have a diplomatic war with the French? Because a bombshell poll published today has shown the British public are so fed up with the French, they want Britain to go to that diplomatic war to stop the boats. The survey conducted by YouGov, as you can see on your screens now, found that 41% of Brits believe the UK is more likely to solve the migrant crisis by standing up more forcefully to France. Now, that comes as the French politician in charge of the area around Calais has demanded that British taxpayers cough up even more cash to send across the Channel to tackle the migrant crisis. But don't worry, Ed Davies says he's got the solution to stop the boats. There he is on his paddleboard and his cycle. He's urging the UK to get closer to the European Union and join their new migration and asylum pact. But with an astonishing 44% in annual boom in refugees on benefits, costing £1.56 billion last year, that's data published just yesterday, is going to war with France pointless, so long as attractive benefits make Britain a magnet for the world's poorest, and they'll come across on a mega dinghy to Hotel Britannia. Well, lots to discuss there. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio in Westminster by GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, and also by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Catherine, let's start with you. This poll is, I think, showing a real change in the British public mood. More people now want to confront France than to cooperate with France. And it's as high as 79% of voters for Reform UK, 3/4 of Conservatives, but only 24% of Labour voters. That is a political conundrum for the Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, because his own voters don't want the clampdown that the majority of the British public do.
Well, certainly Labour and Lib Dem voters are much less preoccupied with the issues around immigration and illegal migration particularly. But yes, there's clearly a toughening attitude in that 41% of the public think that what's most likely to stop the boats is standing up more forcefully to France. It's interesting too, this poll, though, that 40% of people think that the crossings have gone up. Only 22 people think the crossings have gone down. And in fact, despite that mega dinghy with that huge number, record-breaking number of migrants last week, the numbers crossing are actually down about 40%, and they're down about a quarter for the average over the last 4 years. So the government will say, look, we're doing lots right, although I would add that the numbers coming into Europe are down by a similar amount. So that might be why the numbers are down coming across the Channel. But the French would say, look, this is your own fault because you're a soft touch. And I think there is an argument that it is, because it's all about the pull factors that are bringing people across Europe to France, and then from France, a very rich, prosperous country, and people are making that dangerous crossing because they think they're going to get a better deal here. They'll be put up in a hotel, they'll have everything paid, and so on and so forth.
When you look at those numbers that were published yesterday, we covered them on the show, a 44% increase in refugees claiming universal credit. Now, not every one of those refugees came over on a dinghy, but we know that every asylum seeker, every legal immigrant becomes an asylum seeker. They claim asylum when they come here, and the huge majority of them are admitted. So we're seeing here a direct precipitation of the increase in the dinghies, the increase of illegal arrivals, directly fueling an increase in universal credit, which costs an additional total of £1.56 billion a year. That is a huge political headache, and it's one that's it's absolutely haunted a succession of prime ministers now. What to do about it? Well, the Liberal Democrats claim to have a bright idea. Let's now get the Lib Dem Shadow Attorney General on the show, Ben Maguire. Ben, it's a pleasure to have your company. Ed Davey claims to have a cunning plan to help stop the boats to join the European Union's Migration and Asylum Pact. Tell us how that might work out.
Good afternoon, Martin. Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you. Yeah, I think I've been knocking on doors all summer during the recess in North Cornwall. So I know you're sat there in the Westminster studio looking at polls, but I've been kind of hitting the streets and doing the doorstep poll, I guess, and hearing the concerns of constituents across my North Cornwall constituency. And there are concerns about immigration. There's no two ways about that. And one of the things that I hear from people again and again is they don't want to see some of the ludicrous suggestions we've heard from Reform UK of taking Navy boats out of operation and sending them to the Channel when we've got wars going on all over the world, and it's doubtful whether we have enough boats to defend ourselves in some of those conflicts. They actually want to see what the Liberal Democrats have announced today, which is a very reasonable and very sensible and actually very practical solution to this problem, which is a migration pact with the European Union, which would mean that we could actually, I mean, this is crazy that we're even in this situation, but we don't even have data sharing from the UK and other EU countries at the moment, Martin. So that means that migrants may well have been processed and even rejected in an EU country, and then they come to the UK and we've got no way to access that data. We've got no access at all to that information. They could have been rejected on all kinds of grounds, be it people smuggling or anything like that. But since Brexit, we haven't had that ability to get that information from our EU neighbours.
OK, Ben, how much will your proposal cost and what will the European want in return?
So obviously it would be a negotiation, Martin. I wouldn't want to get ahead of those negotiations.
Well, no, because I'll tell you, Ben, you say that I haven't done my homework on immigration. You haven't done your homework on the deal you're proposing.
Oh, that's not fair, Martin. Let me just finish. You asked me a question. Let me just finish my answer.
How much would it cost and what will the EU want in return? Because I've done my research. You tell me.
I'm going to get to that. You just let me finish my sentence.
Go on, then.
So at the I sit on the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I know exactly what the current broken system costs, and that's around £5 billion a year of taxpayer money, and around £2 billion of that is housing a lot of these refugees in expensive hotels. So I look at that as part of my Home Affairs
That wasn't the question I asked, Ben McGuire. The question I asked, the question I asked was how much would Britain have to pay to join the scheme? Because Norway is in this scheme and so is Switzerland. And it costs 600 million euros per year to be a part of the scheme. And there's a catch. And it's this. You have to take quotas of asylum seekers from the European Union. Do you know how many that is per year?
So at the moment, Martin, we're seeing since Brexit 200,000 small boat crossings.
Ben, the answer is 30,000.
I do know.
We would have to take
really
30,000 asylum seekers.
Martin, are you?
I don't think you know the answers, Ben. I'm just trying to help you out.
It's quite hard to keep my train of thought when you keep constantly interrupting me. But what I was trying to explain is since Brexit, there's been 200,000 small boat crossings. Guess what the number was before Brexit, Martin? That number was 0. So we clearly need to cooperate with our European neighbours.
Tunnel, Ben.
Sorry?
They came through the Channel Tunnel. They stopped coming through the Channel Tunnel because we stopped that point of entry. They shifted their strategy to the beaches because the Channel Tunnel was closed. Small lorries.
It was nowhere near the 200,000 figure, Martin, and you know that. That's disingenuous. It was nowhere near the numbers that we're seeing in small boat crossings.
Do you think Brexit is to blame for the small boats invasion?
Absolutely, it was zero. It was literally zero before Brexit, and now we've seen 200,000 small boat crossings since Brexit.
So Brexit's caused
Clearly,
that.
we need to cooperate and work with our closest neighbours. This scheme would cost around £100 million a year, and I've just told you we're spending £5 billion on things like hotels, on things like processing. So, of course, working with our closest European neighbours would massively, massively alleviate the situation.
But it hasn't worked. Working with the European Union hasn't worked. The numbers have gone up and up and up. The Belfast returns deal, that's something that the Liberal Democrats like to say is a great solution. It was a disaster. It was a disaster from 2015 when the migration crisis ripped through Europe and 1 million Syrians went into Germany. The Belfast returns deal became a net disaster for Britain because we were forced to take the precise asylum allocation that you're suggesting we rejoin by rejoining the European Union's pact today. It's an outmoded solution. It doesn't work. And I put it to you, the Liberal Democrats are completely out of touch with the electorate. You're just doing this because you're posturing to Brussels and playing to your own electoral base.
No, that's absolute nonsense, Martin. I told you I've been out on doorsteps across North Cornwall, and this proposal has gone down really, really well with people. And we've seen it work in other European countries really effectively. We're seeing hundreds of thousands of small boats, as you just put up on your screen a moment ago. And this would actually allow us, like I said at the start, to share data with European countries who have already processed a lot of these migrants. It just feels like a no-brainer to me. Why are we not working with our closest neighbours who have already made significant investments screening these immigrants, processing these immigrants, getting all the background information?
Because it didn't work.
And then they come into the UK, we're not able to access any of that information, and we put them up in hotels to the tune of £2 billion a year. This proposal would mean we'd work much more closely with our European neighbours, and we'd hand back a proportion of those asylum seekers who have already been processed in the European country.
It will be a superannuated version of Sir Keir Starmer's disastrous one-in, one-out scheme. It'd be more expensive. It would put us on the hook to take asylum quotas from Europe. Those are the terms of engagement of the deal. That's the deal. I'm one of those boring people who spends time. I spend my time reading European Union contracts. I've read it. This is a terrible deal for Britain.
I think you mentioned earlier, Martin, the Belfast Agreement, but I think you probably meant the Dublin Agreement, did you, before Brexit?
Yeah, sorry, I got my Irish places mixed up there, but the numbers stand. It was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing is, Martin, I keep going back to it, and I sound like a broken record, but you know and I know we had 0 small boat crossings before Brexit. And you might say we had hundreds of thousands of people hiding in lorries, but that's just not true. Of course, there were people that came in lorries, and they came in other ways, like they still do today. But we weren't seeing these very dangerous channel crossings that are run by people smugglers and the like.
But the immigration crisis across the entire continent of Europe only really began in earnest in 2015. And it came before Brexit. Everything changed. That's the point. And when that sort of tide of humanity came through Europe and inexorably it came towards the shores of France, they changed tactics and came on dinghy. It's not Brexit. This is people smugglers evading authorities any way they can.
I'm sure, Martin, it was just a pure coincidence as this problem suddenly occurred after Brexit. I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure you're right. I would like to just say, though, as well, the other thing we really need to get right, and particularly the Home Affairs Committee have been looking carefully at this, is the processing of migrants. We're putting them up in accommodation, which is costing, as I say, £2 billion a year to the taxpayer.
That's terrible.
Liberal Democrats want to see that processing have massive investment so we can process those asylum seekers quickly and fairly, yes, it would be an upfront investment, but we would get through the backlog within 6 months. We pledged to do that. And that's the kind of fair and reasonable system I think people want to see, certainly in North Cornwall and across the country. But we also do, unfortunately, need to tackle this as it is, which is an international issue. It's not just Little Britain, we're an island on our own. It's an international issue. And that means, unfortunately, Martin, I know you don't like it, but it means cooperating with our closest neighbours.
But we already
in
do.
Europe. It means working
we sent the French £1 billion, Ben Maguire. We sent them £600 million a year. Cooperation isn't getting us anywhere.
Basic data with our European neighbours.
Okay, well, that entente cordiale didn't work before. Perhaps it will in the future. Thank you very much for joining us, the Liberal Democrat Shadow Attorney General Ben Maguire, for a spirited exchange. Let's cross now to Washington, D.C., where Donald Trump is showing off the construction work at the White House. Now, as you can see there, he's signing a placard. It's one of the foundation stones by the looks of it. A new helipad is being built on the South Lawn, which is said to be costing $6 million. And the president hopes it'll be completed before the Chinese president Xi Jinping visits the US late next month. And of course, the contentious issue you can see behind you, the construction on that huge ballroom, which has become, how should we put it, something of a lightning rod issue in the United States. There's Donald Trump there live in DC, signing what appears to be one of the flagstones for the new helipad, which hopes to welcome in Xi Jinping late next month. Now, still to come, Tories claim households could save about £540 a year after 2030 by ditching the net zero targets that they introduced. That's next here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
It is 4:27. Welcome back with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Conservative Party today have pledged to ditch net zero, even though they introduced it, and prioritise cheap energy, saving Britain £320 billion. But Green campaigners say they're living in fantasy land. Well, GB News' national reporter Jack Carson is at the site of Britain's biggest proposed solar farm in Lincolnshire. Jack, they're monstrous. Tell us about the mood there on the ground.
Yeah, well, with this Springwell solar farm site, which is the biggest, essentially, at more than 3,000 acres of a solar farm, which is planned here in Lincolnshire in conjunction with other planned farms around this area, you're looking at kind of 40 square kilometres of this part of Lincolnshire being covered to provide that renewable energy. Those plans have all been agreed by this Labour government, and we've been speaking to residents today, finding out about their objections. But let's get some word on it from the local MP here, Dr. Caroline Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us. Just kind of give us a sense of why this part of Lincolnshire is inappropriate for this kind of renewable energy.
So Lincolnshire is the breadbasket of the UK, produces 30% of vegetables, 12% of food for the UK overall. So it's the best land, and clearly if one wants to put solar farms out, it's not sensible to put it into the best part of your country for producing food. There is a balance to be struck. We need food security, we need energy security, we need both. But solar panels are not efficient use of energy. We live in a country where generally we need more energy when it's cold and dark, and solar panels are more effective when it's warm and sunny. So it just doesn't make sense.
Now, the government will say the reason they're approving sites like this is because they're trying to create green energy jobs. They're trying to create renewable energy, which they say will be able to bring down the costs of energy bills for people in this country. Is that not a good aim to go for? Are they not right in what they're trying to do?
Well, aiming for cheaper energy is a good thing, but that's not what they're delivering. They're delivering more expensive bills, and what that does is it pushes jobs offshore to where energy is cheaper, which costs jobs. And if you look behind you, these fields need tending. People are employed in looking after, in drilling the fields, ploughing the fields, looking after the crops and such like. So they're costing those jobs, and they're pushing energy prices up in doing so.
Now, this new report out today, which the Conservatives are supporting, says that it should be a mixed kind of use of energy. So some of the grid is powered by gas, some by nuclear, some by wind and solar. So it doesn't rule out using solar. So why is this plan better than, say, what this Labour government are trying to pursue?
So this plan looks at the balance of energy and how it's used. It's building its onward report, building on work that was started by Claire Coutinho in government and scrapped by Ed Miliband, as I understand it, once he came into power. So what it does is it talks about how we can use nuclear energy and other forms of more reliable energy, gas from the North Sea, so that we've got more reliable sources of energy that are cheaper. It doesn't rule out using solar, but what it does do is say we won't use solar on the best and most versatile agricultural land. And this Springwell site is almost half the best and most versatile agricultural land. This is our best land. We shouldn't be using our best land for growing food to put solar panels on.
But getting here, of course, it was the last Conservative government that pursued kind of net zero. So what's kind of been the change in tune, as you like? Why all of a sudden is this kind of new way of thinking that the Conservatives are now kind of supporting? Why kind of do this now rather than when you're in government?
So first of all, Claire did start this work when we were in government, and secondly, you know, I was opposing this. I had several debates in Parliament about Springwell and about solar whilst we were in government, and I met with Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister one-to-one to talk to him about the scale of these projects, the simple size of them relative to places he was familiar with, like Northallerton and Chequers Estate. And as in government, the Conservatives did bring in rules pertaining to best and most versatile land and the cumulative effect of having many applications in a similar area. And unfortunately, they're not being adhered to now.
So what do you see the impact of this being? If this solar farm is to go ahead, we know there's an application in currently for a substation. If this is all to go ahead, what do you see the impact being on this part of Lincolnshire?
Well, it's industrialisation of the best part of the country to grow food, and that doesn't make sense at all.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Caroline Johnson, for joining us here from, as we were saying, what is planned to be the largest solar farm in the country. Martin, residents have been telling us today a lot of their concerns, whether it is about the safety of those panels and the big, huge lithium kind of batteries that are involved in it. But the developer EDF, who are developing the Springwell site and say that they will be providing power for 180,000 homes, says that as the project moves forward, we remain committed to working collaboratively with local communities and partners to reduce the impacts of construction, delivering long-term benefits, they say, for the region.
Okay, thank you very much there, Jack Carson, live for us from Lincolnshire. Thank you very much indeed, Jack. Back to the studio, Nigel Nelson. You know, I've been doing a lot of driving and holidaying and training around Britain. These solar farms, they're everywhere now. They're monstrous. They're taking over primo agricultural land, as we saw there in Lincolnshire. The land underneath them basically dying away. No one seems to care about that. But I want to talk about the politics of this. There's been a strange awakening, hasn't there, from the Conservatives. Theresa May introduced in 2019 the most punishing net zero targets in all of Europe. Boris Johnson made them worse. And suddenly, well, there's been this awakening from the previous awokening, and the Tories seem to have done a complete U-turn on it.
Yeah, I think they have. And I think you're probably right, just for political advantage. Net zero is not popular because people think it costs them. And it does in the short term. So the Tories have decided to go against it. In fact, the Onward think tank report that the new Tory policy is based on is very good. I mean, it's basically talking about how you mix different things together to bring electric bills down. So from that point of view, that's the right direction. Just abolishing net zero is not the answer. The question is actually how you make everything work. So the important bit is electricity only represents 10% of emissions. 90% is transport, it's heating. You've got to address those issues to bring emissions down, and that's what this report is suggesting.
But it was Jeremy Hunt, the then Conservative Chancellor, who imposed the most punitive taxation on North Sea oil in history. Rishi Sunak then increased it, made it so expensive to drill. Companies were in retreat. Now, Labour seem to have made matters worse under Keir Starmer. Will we drill again under Andy Burnham? It's another one of those issues that he seems to be completely sitting on the fence on. We simply don't know. But I think there has been a huge awakening now, the wokery of net zero, when it's been priced up. It doesn't work. It's unreliable. We can't store the power on those those solar panels generate there. When it's too hot, they don't work. When it's too windy, the wind turbines turn off. We need to drill, baby, drill. And by the way, we need to go nuclear.
Well, I would agree with you. We need to go nuclear. I mean, back in 1965, we had 21 nuclear reactors, which was more than the rest of the world put together. We then went through a fallow period from 1995 to now, 30 years. We didn't build anything, and now we're finally building Hinkley Point C, plus some modular reactors. You're absolutely right. France has kept on their nuclear programme. Their electricity bills are a third lower than ours.
And by the way, with the withdrawal agreement being talked about this week, potential renegotiation if Reform UK get into power about benefits across the continent, power is one of the central things that kept us tethered to the European Union, because baked into the withdrawal agreement was our desire, our need to take power, and particularly from France. And if we try and unpick anything else, they can turn off the lights. Energy sovereignty has never been more important.
Absolutely right, and that's why renewables are so important. That if we can make solar work and we can make wind farms work.
Well, they're big ifs.
Well, they're not impossible. I mean, we do need to get the technology right, but make those work. We have energy sovereignty.
Okay, superb, Nigel Nelson. Thank you as ever. Now, the Energy Secretary, Miatta Fanbule, said Labour is investing in more clean energy jobs, cutting tax on electricity bills to give families breathing space this winter, and we're taking action to tackle the climate crisis and bring down bills for good. Kemi Badenoch would put jobs at risk and increase bills. As global fossil fuel prices continue to rise amid conflict overseas and wildfires rage across the UK, we can't turn our back on clean power. That won't bring down bills and it won't address the climate crisis. The Tories don't have a clue. Still to come, investigators say they found a track irregularity at the site, of course, of that Lewis train derailment. That's next here on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Further showers across more northern areas through the rest of today. A little bit brighter further south after quite a wet start to the day. That weather front from this morning has moved further south and east. Behind it, we've got further weather fronts that will bring more showery rain thanks to this area of low pressure through the rest of today and into Thursday as well. Some of these showers could bring some impacts because they bring a risk of thunderstorms with hail and lightning to parts of Northern Ireland and eastern Scotland, and later tonight into tomorrow morning across parts of North Wales and northern England. Elsewhere, there's a chance of a showery outbreak of rain overnight. Temperatures relatively mild for the time of year across more southern areas, a little bit fresher to start the day across the far north of Scotland in particular, because we've got quite a brisk northerly wind into Thursday morning, particularly across north and eastern coastal areas, so you will really notice that breeze. Further west, the winds will be a little bit lighter, but there's quite a lot of cloud to start the day on Thursday and further showers through the morning. Now through Thursday, not going to be quite as frequent across more northern areas, but through the morning across North Wales, northern England, that's where we'll see the most frequent and heaviest downpours. More southern and eastern areas of England will likely be fairly dry to start the day, but some of these showers could push further south and east into these areas later on by lunchtime and into the afternoon. Further north, a drier afternoon to come, some sunny spells breaking through for parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, but still a chance of a few showers as well. Widely a much cooler day on Thursday with more in the way of cloud around. Temperatures below average actually for more northern areas, quite close to average across the south. Showers will tend to ease into Thursday evening as we head towards Friday, as it will be a drier end to the week, and the weekend is looking relatively dry as well as high pressure builds in from the west once again. So more in the way of sunshine, less in the way of rain, but that might not last too long. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for all of you who listen to GB News Radio.
Whether you're at home or on the go, you're making us Britain's news channel and Britain's radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A36 is closed after the A360 in Salisbury, and the A303 is closed after the A358. The M27 westbound is closed at Junction 2 in Romsey, and the M1 is closed between Junctions 9 and 11A in Luton. In Scotland, the A90 southbound at Parkhill is partially blocked after a collision. Across Wales, the A4232 northbound from St Fagans to M4J33 Capel Llanilturn is congested with possible delays. And on the trains, Greater Anglia services are facing major disruption between Shenfield and Southend Victoria. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 4:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, investigators have revealed that a track defect was caught on CCTV less than 2 hours before a train derailed near Lewes last week. 2 passengers suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries and remain in hospital, while 18 others who were hurt have since been mercifully discharged. I'm delighted now to be joined by Simon Calder, who's the travel correspondent, of course, at The Telegraph. Simon, we covered this story on the day, you and I, and it looked evident. You could see the train line looked as though it had warped. You and I pontificated. Was it the heat that had caused that? And now it appears an irregularity has come to light. Tell us more.
Yes, you're quite right. So this was the afternoon of Tuesday, the 13th of August. As you say, you were on the air at the time. The train was travelling from London south towards Lewes and then to Eastbourne. And crucially, from the Rail Accident Investigation Branch, they have got footage which was actually from a train a couple of hours earlier. And that shows a definite kink in the tracks. Now, at the time, there were no concerns about it, or none reported that we know of. The accident investigators say that the train was travelling at 65 miles an hour. The limit on that stretch of track is 70 miles an hour. When it crossed this track geometry irregularity, as it's known, the driver put on the brakes. Presumably, the driver thought that there was something awry and wasn't taking any chances, but it could well be, and this is speculation, but from what we have seen of the accident site, certainly just looking at the pictures you're showing there, it appears that this kink suddenly, when the front of the train, this was 8 carriages long, travelled over it, that applied forces which basically meant that the track got completely out of shape, and as a result of that, the last 3 carriages were very sadly derailed and they fell onto their side. It's, as you say, 20 people injured, 2 of them seriously. The Department for Transport, meanwhile, has come out and said that, of course, they are looking forward to the full report. This is just a preliminary report, and actually for this to come out just 6 days after the accident, I think is very impressive. The DFT is very keen to say that the UK has one of the safest railways in the world, and that a vast amount is spent on maintaining the track. But as the incident shows, it doesn't need to be very much of a problem suddenly to become a really serious incident, and every single inch of track has to be working absolutely perfectly.
Simon, when you and I covered this story a week ago today together, it just happened. It was self-evident with the naked eye. There was really clear evidence there was a buckled section of the track. And you and I think we seem to have got the diagnosis correct. Once the train went over there, it was thrown into a violent spin, and in the end, the back of the train hopped off. The CCTV footage was there. We talked at the time, you mentioned at the time, there's potentially the need, the requirements to paint train tracks white in the future so they reflect the sunlight, which makes them so hot. But Simon, checking every piece of CCTV in real time across the land, painting every train track white, that's a huge undertaking.
Oh, it certainly is, yes. And this took place on the hottest day of the year so far. The temperature at the nearest weather station was just 27 Celsius. But as discussed, if you are, if a steel rail is in direct sunlight, that the temperature of that rail can be well above the air temperature. And of course, British infrastructure is designed for lower temperatures, and so therefore they are looking at both whether the heat was a contributory factor in terms of distorting the rails, but also they're looking at the possibility that the ground underneath the track may have shifted because of all the dry weather. And furthermore, they note that it appears that some maintenance work had been going on in that site. So there's several different avenues that they are pursuing. Meanwhile, of course, people are very keen to get the line opened again. It's a very precarious and difficult business, recovering all the rolling stock, all the train from there, taking it somewhere else, and then fixing the line so that trains can run again. And I understand that some passengers' belongings are still in the train because they cannot be safely rescued. So a bit of a waiting game for lots of people. And yeah, a busy commuter line, and the sooner it opens for an awful lot of commuters in places like Lewes, Hastings and Eastbourne, the better.
Simon, in the past we've had the wrong type of leaves, we've had the wrong type of snow, now it's the wrong type of heat. Is it just an example of the fact that Britain just doesn't seem to work properly when the weather's slightly different?
Well, it remains to be seen. What I will foresee is that if heat is found to be a contributory factor, we will see really quite quickly, if there is extra hot weather, we will see speed restrictions put in place kind of on a blanket basis, because it's the speed of the train dictates how strong the force is on the rails. And if you slow trains down, there's less chance that they will cause the rails to buckle. And also, if they do, if there is a derailment, the slower the speed, the less harm it will cause. But at the moment, we're still waiting for the investigators to complete their work.
Simon Calder, what fun that'd be. Speed restrictions. It took me 5 hours to get home from Newark at the weekend to London. I had to go back to Nottingham. Everything was down. It was packed. I can't wait for mandatory speed limits across Britain. Thank you very much, Simon. Always a pleasure to have your company. The travel correspondent, of course, at The Telegraph. Now, coming up next, the IndyCar Series hits the streets of Washington, D.C. this weekend. And GB News' chief US correspondent, Ben Leo, look at him. He's been getting behind the wheel for a taste of the action. Once again, I've got job envy. First, though, is the forecast of some of your top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's not just the UK where we've seen a change in the weather this week, certainly much cooler across northern and central Europe, with some very lively thunderstorms in places. Now, there are some thunderstorms around on Thursday for eastern parts of Spain into the south of Iberia, for example. But the liveliest downpours and thunderstorms most likely northern Italy into the Alps, and especially around the Italian lakes, where there could be some very significant rain right there through this week and into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Becky, Chad and the beekeepers, Richard, Mohammed and James. Well, thank you all for coming. So tell us what happened.
So I got a phone call about 7:30 on Sunday evening from one of the rangers to tell us that there was a forest fire that was spreading quite rapidly and the bees were in danger, and if we could get down as soon as we could to get them out.
And I suppose this is a real challenge, because bees, whilst they do flit around all over the place, they're pretty stuck to their colonies.
Yes, absolutely. The boys were the ones that were there.
When we approached it, the fire was quite close to the colonies, so we had to make a decision very quickly on whether or not to remove them from the apiary or keep them there and try and just water down the area. And after we saw flames on the horizon, we decided that, no, we've just got to make the decision to move the bees to a safer place, which we did.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I do think it's worrying that young people, I mean, are they I think they are more risk averse. Yes. I think they are scared of getting into personal space. I think you're right, there are issues about consent and everything else. But how sad that people say that it's been a year since they've been kissed. What is life for if you're not having a little kiss every now and again?
Yeah, the death of the kiss.
Apparently, much younger people now haven't had a good snog in over 12 months on average, the people that have been interviewed. But I would hazard a guess that that's because people are frightened. Men don't know when they can approach women anymore. Men can think 1 or 2 steps ahead on the same board, whereas a woman will think about 18 steps. So
I think you're overthinking it.
If a man takes you to Paris for the weekend, a woman will come back disappointed that they haven't proposed them, whereas a man thinks they've done a really great thing.
Why do men always think you're going to be proposed to in Paris? That you expect that? We don't expect
men
that.
are not
Just take
emotionally
us to
intelligent.
Paris.
The People's Channel.
We're flying home at 11 o'clock tonight.
Oh, and mummy and daughter.
Yeah, and it only costs £70, so we thought, well, why not? Because it's cheaper than a supermarket shop.
Supermarket shop or spending the day in Benidorm with cheap booze.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a no-brainer.
And is there no chance you might just decide we're going to stay?
No, because my husband would kill me. We did consider it, because I said to my mum earlier on, we might just stay and miss the flight, but she's not up for it.
Has your husband actually visited Benidorm the Zone?
No, he hasn't. I've been here 27 times. That's my daughter's first time. She's a Benidorm virgin. But
well,
my husband's never been.
Not that he's told you anyway, let's put it like that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It is 10 minutes before the hour of 5. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the roar of IndyCar engines will fill the streets of the Washington, D.C. this weekend for the Freedom 250 Grand Prix. Drivers navigate around some of the city's major landmarks. But what does it actually feel like behind the wheel of a single-seater racing car? Well, I'm not at all jealous because Ben Leo has been finding out. Getting behind the wheel of a Formula 4 motor car similar to the ones the drivers will be racing this weekend. Off you go, Ben.
Just sat in the car for the first time. Very tight. I'm quite tall. I'm about, well, just under 6'2", and yeah, buzzing. I don't want to just rock around at 30 miles an hour. I want to get true race experience. The brakes are very sensitive. And the pedals are so close together. Here we go, first time turning. It's so tight in here, when I steer, my hand is hitting my lap. The handling is insane. I feel like I'm getting faster now. My feet are so big and hitting each other when I change from gas to brake. Feels like I'm in Formula 1, there's a helicopter above. Wow, amazing. All that power under your fingertips and your feet. Wow. Woo! Amazing. So low to the ground, the noise behind me, the heat.
Best fun you can have with your clothes on.
Just imagine doing that as like an IndyCar driver or F1 driver. Go much faster, obviously, but for 70 laps for hours on end. Oh man, that's so good. Yes. First of all, feedback.
Well, looks like you did well. You started settling in like you belong there.
Tell us about Summit Point. What an amazing site you've got here. 800 acres, 4 or 5 different tracks.
We've got 4 tracks here, 3 motorsports tracks, 5 ring ranges. If you don't find anything to do here, you can't find anything to do. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So we're here because of the Indy race through Washington, D.C. What do Americans think of that?
Pretty exciting. I mean, we love racing, and to have racing in D.C. is pretty incredible. I can't tell you how many times a road racing map has been drawn on a napkin before, trying to get ready for it.
Come on then, Greg. What are my chances? IndyCar in 5 years?
Well, as long as you keep the phone ringer on, I think you're days away.
As a driver of Formula Car single-seaters, what will they be thinking ahead of this race?
It's tough. It's a new track. It's unproven. You're racing, at the home of America. There's going to be nerves, there's going to be pressure, but these are pros. I think they can handle it. It's going to be noisy. It's going to be a blast. The Indy fans know how to have fun, so you don't want to miss it. You want to be there.
I've got to say, I think I beat Ben Leo on my motorbike around that track. Just saying. Anyway, you won't want to meet the Freedom 250 Grand Prix live this weekend on GB News. And Ben Leo will be live, of course, at that race. Now, don't go anywhere, because a bombshell poll today showing the British public is so fed up with the French, they are ready for a full-blown diplomatic war to stop le boats. Is it time to go toe-to-toe with the French? That's next here on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's not just the UK where we've seen a change in the weather this week, certainly much cooler across northern and central Europe, with some very lively thunderstorms in places. Now, there are some thunderstorms around on Thursday for eastern parts of Spain into the south of Iberia, for example. But the liveliest downpours and thunderstorms most likely northern Italy into the Alps, and especially around the Italian lakes, where there could be some very significant rain right there through this week and into the weekend.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're
the failure is
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A14 westbound is affected by a collision between junctions 23 and 22. In Scotland, the A90 southbound at Parkhill is partially blocked by a road traffic incident. Across Wales, the M4 eastbound from J33 Capel Llanilturn to J32 Corriton is congested with possible delays. And on the trains, Greater Anglia services are facing major disruption between Shenfield and Southend Victoria, while Chiltern Railway services are disrupted between Aylesbury and Princes Risborough. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win over £65,000 in prizes. You could be our latest Great British Giveaway winner. First of all, we want to give you £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also receive a fine gold bar worth over £5,000.
For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you beautiful people. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Dorby Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you faithfully as ever until 6. A cracking show awaits. Here's what's on today's menu. Top story this afternoon, a bombshell poll published today showing the British public are so fed up with the French, they want Britain to go to diplomatic war to stop le boats, with 41% of Brits demanding tougher action, rising to 79% of Reform UK voters. Is it time to defund the French? Is it time to say maintenant to Monsieur Macron? Damning new data published today has shown a record 1.3 million migrants are claiming universal credit, costing British taxpayers an incredible £11 billion per year, with an astonishing 44% boom in refugees, costing £1.56 billion on its own. Is there any wonder the dinghies keep coming when handouts and free houses magnetise migrants over the Channel? And the Lib Dem leader, Daubney, has suggested that Britain should join the European Union's Migrant and Asylum Pact, adding Farage and the Conservatives should hang their heads in shame. But critics have pointed out that the EU scheme could cost Britain £500 million and force us to take up to 30,000 asylum seekers. Has Ed Davey become open borders Ed? As Keir Starmer spent so long U-turning and sitting on the fence as Prime Minister, he earned the nickname Sir Fence-Sitter. There he is. So is Andy Burnham, though, following in Sir Keir Starmer's flip-flop footsteps, with policy U-turns on HMOs, on North Sea oil and on the release of PC Andrew Harper's killers? Might Andy Burnham surpass even Sir Keir Starmer and become Westminster's ultimate fence-sitter? That's all coming up on today's show. Welcome to the channel. It's a pleasure to have your company. Do you sometimes think, as you join me on the show, the lunatics have truly taken over our asylum system? We can't stop the boats. We're throwing £1 billion at the French, president of the region of Hauts-de-France today, Xavier Bertrand, is not only asking for more money, he's saying it's Britain's fault that the dinghies keep coming. And then you realise he's got a point. The reason the boats keep coming is because of figures like those published today that show that there's a 44% boom in refugees. Now, they're claiming £1.56 billion. Now, every refugee now was a previous asylum seeker. Everybody coming to Britain on a dinghy claims asylum. QED. The dinghies will keep on coming so long as the handouts keep on being shovelled out by you, the great British taxpayer. Meanwhile, Ed Davey is actually suggesting the answer is to do a deal with the European Union. There's two problems. It would cost hundreds of millions of pounds, and it would mean taking quotas from the European Union. When is somebody going to sort out this absolute catastrophe in the Channel before the British people finally snap and lose their patience? Get in touch. The way to do so, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do that, or scan the QR code on your screens now. But enough from me. Here's your headlines at 5 p.m. with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock. Well, Andy Burnham has said he wants to get everyone in for Christmas. He's promising every rough sleeper the offer of a bed before the end of the year. The Prime Minister's trying to revive the spirit of the pandemic-era Everyone In scheme, which helped thousands of rough sleepers off the streets. He's announced another £100 million for emergency accommodation and support, taking the total package now to more than £440 million. He says the aim is to offer that emergency accommodation along with health support and help to rebuild lives. The Conservatives, though, say the pledge lacks a delivery plan, while homelessness charities say longer-term support will still be needed. Speaking earlier today, Andy Burnham insisted the money will be enough, but admits that charities, councils and faith groups will also need to pull together.
I feel very passionately about this. I spoke in Downing Street when I came into office about putting a care for people at the heart of everything that we do, and that can't be done if you've got people who've just got nowhere to go and are left sleeping in the streets. In this country, I don't think in this day and age anybody should be forced to sleep rough. And actually, when you do leave people sleeping rough, it can often cost more to the state because people can be in and out of A&E and in and out of hospital beds and sometimes in contact with the police. It's just the right thing to do.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives have claimed households could save around £540 a year. That's if net zero electricity rules are scrapped. The Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho says that Britain needs to prioritise cheaper electricity over its renewable targets. She says the party would remove carbon taxes, scrap wind subsidies and reduce the need for new pylons and cables. The Tories say the plan would still leave Britain with electricity that is almost 80% clean, but at a much lower cost. Making that announcement earlier, Claire Coutinho said that expensive power has been hitting living standards far too hard.
Prove to me that renewables are cheap. Like all of you, I'd heard people saying that for years. But to my astonishment, they could not prove it. Our entire energy policy was based on this promise that all this wind and solar was going to cut bills. And yet, when I combed through the spreadsheets put in front of me, I realised that they didn't have the evidence there to back it up. The truth is that too much wind and solar creates all of these extra hidden costs. It's like a Ryanair flight. The ticket might look cheap, but once you've paid for a bag, a seat and a sandwich, you realise you've been stung.
Next to the details emerging this afternoon of police naming the 3 family members who died after getting into difficulty in the sea off of Shoreham. We can now bring you a picture of each of those 3 family members. Hassan El Khawas, who was 55, his 37-year-old partner Zaina Alian and their 14-year-old daughter Sarah El Khawas were pulled from the water on Tuesday afternoon. We've also now heard from the Palestinian Forum in Britain, who say that 2 other children were on shore from the same family at the time of the incident. They are now being cared for by family members. The young girl who was involved in the incident and is still in hospital is, we now know, the younger daughter of the couple who died. She remains in hospital in critical condition. Sussex police say their investigation remains open, but after reviewing CCTV footage and initial witness accounts, their current understanding is that this was sadly a tragic accident with no third-party involvement. Higher gas bills have pushed UK inflation back up to 2.9%. That is the highest level in 4 months. The rate rose in the year to July, up from 2.6% the month before. The Office for National Statistics says the increase was driven by the sharpest rise in gas prices for almost 4 years. Chancellor John Healey says Iran war inflation is still affecting prices here at home, but insists the economy remains resilient. And in Scotland, an urgent manhunt is now underway after 2 men were found stabbed to death inside a flat in Glasgow. Paul Lafferty, who was 50, and 54-year-old Gary Beatson were discovered at a property in Partick on Sunday afternoon. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene, police now launching a double murder investigation. Detectives there say that a knife, they believe, was used and that they are keeping an open mind over whether one person or more may have been involved. Those are the 5 o'clock headlines. More news shortly. Next, though, one last look at today's markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Fast approaching 9 minutes past 5. The markets for you. The pound will buy $1.36 and €1.17. The price of gold is £3,258 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 10,750 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Brace yourselves, we've got some huge breaking news. Very, very rare a story comes to GB News that completely takes my breath away, but it's this. It's emerged a short moment ago that asylum seekers coming to Britain are being given booklets telling them not to rape women and warning that sex with children is illegal in the United Kingdom. The guide is freely available on the Home Office website. You can see some pictures on your screen now, obtained by GB News. It also tells migrants that men and women are equal under UK law. And in a section on domestic abuse, it says that people will go to prison if they attack their partner. Let's just recap what people coming here are being told by the Home Office. Asylum seekers given booklets telling them not to rape women and warning them that sex with children is illegal. It goes on to say the legal age of consent in the UK is 16, and this means that anyone under the age of 16 is considered a child and cannot legally agree to have sex. Sex with someone under the age of 16 is a serious crime in the UK. There are no exceptions to this rule. It continues. Even if they say yes, it is still illegal. You could go to prison, lose your support and accommodation, and it will affect your asylum claim. Seriously. This is being handed out to asylum seekers in this country. It's been written by the Sun newspaper, a disturbing guide on how not to rape women in the United Kingdom. It's been paid for by the British taxpayer, and it's being handed out to immigrants arriving from different countries. Look at it. In the UK, both people must say yes to sex. It says this is called consent. There's a picture there of a woman crying on a bed, look. If you have sex with someone who does not want to, this is called rape. Rape is a serious crime. If it is still rape if you're married to the person or are in a relationship. It is still rape if they agreed once but changed their mind. If you have sex without consent, you could go to prison, it warns. Presumably in the countries some of these men are coming from, none of these rules apply. Is this an admission? We're importing dangerous men from countries who have no concept of British law, no concept of sex with minors, no concept of rules of consent, no concept of the rules of standard, decent, respectful engagement. It continues, as you can see on your screen, in terms of violence. It's illegal to harass people, it says. In the UK, everyone has the right to feel safe in public. It warns people as if they need telling. You must never make sexual comments to strangers, even as a compliment. You must never approach someone repeatedly if they are not interested. That's called stalking or harassment. You must never, it concludes, follow someone or block their path. Now, this guide is freely available on the Home Office website. It also tells migrants that men and women are equal under UK law. And as I say, that section on domestic abuse, it says that people can go to prison if they attack their partner. We're joined in the studio by GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Catherine, we've all just seen this. It's just landed here at GB News. I just feel in a state of shock. I absolutely feel in a state of shock that our government, the Home Office, is spending taxpayers' money producing literature to give to men from countries who don't understand it's not OK to have sex with a child. This is astonishing.
It is quite staggering to see it there in black and white, what we all think goes without saying, but clearly it doesn't go without saying to many of these people coming from very different cultures. I'm sure that the Home Office would say that this is effectively them trying to protect the British people by making it clear to asylum seekers what the expectations are. I suspect, though, a lot of the public will think, hang on, your job, your first job of the government is to keep British citizens safe, and in letting these people who've crossed the channel illegally into the country, you are putting British people in danger, and that this is a very poor sticking plaster, giving them a booklet. I don't know if it's also made in lots of different languages. Do we really believe that all these people have English to a level to understand every word of this? But, you know, we've seen it again and again. Increasingly in the press, these asylum seekers, refugees that have attacked British people. We had the horrific case just a couple of days ago of the elderly man who'd been inebriated in the street and had been raped, I think, for about 20 minutes by an Eritrean. So it's not only British women and girls who are being put at risk, it is potentially anyone.
It's worth pointing out, so many times we've seen so many disturbing cases where it's emerged in court. There was a 14-year-old schoolgirl who was raped whilst living in an asylum hotel, the migrant was, in Epping. Do you remember this precipitated all of those protests across the country? And he said in court it was normal to marry children in his country. We've seen so many cases where it's normal in my country to do this, and therefore these crimes happen on British soil, and perhaps these rapists, these paedophiles, these monsters think it's okay because in their country it is okay. Don't forget, the Ethiopian Hadash Gabatu was sentenced for sexual assault before being deported to Ethiopia. He constantly harassed a girl who was 14. He kept asking to come back with us or trying to get us to go back to the Bell Hotel with him. He told us as well that in his country, it is normal to marry 14-year-olds. Is this not the final admission? We've got a dreadful, dreadful problem with important people, men, from third world nations ostensibly, who simply don't understand the rules of engagement. And why are we surprised when these dreadful crimes keep happening? Nigel Nelson, can you in any way defend this?
I think you need to see it through a slightly different lens. If you go on holiday abroad, you ought to check up on the laws of the country you're going to, especially if it is a different culture from our own.
Do you think asylum seekers on dinghies are going to do that, gen up on British consent laws?
Well, I mean, that's what the Home Office is obviously trying. The age of consent, for instance, is different in different countries. It doesn't hurt reminding anybody who comes here what the age of consent is in this country.
Nigel, I know what you're trying to do, but I think you're making it worse. You're admitting we're importing rape culture. You're admitting these people have no idea. You are.
You are now exaggerating what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is that actually telling asylum seekers, or actually any visitor to this country, these are the laws of the land you must abide by, is a sensible precaution. There is, for instance, there's a section there which is saying that women in Britain can work, travel, without the consent of a man. Now, in Afghanistan, that is not normal. So if an Afghan is coming here, it is worth them knowing that this is the way that normal life happens in our country, and it's nothing abnormal.
Nigel, I can sense the entire nation out there, I'm afraid to say, just throwing things at the TV.
It wouldn't be the first time.
I'm sorry. Let's get my next guest in now. I'm joined by the former Director General of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Tony, I'm just utterly gobsmacked by this. We clearly have a huge problem with sexual violence in Britain. The Liberal left won't engage with this debate. They call us racist if we say there is a propensity for certain cultures to engage in certain crimes above the average of Brits. The evidence is there. Afghans, 22 times more likely. Eritreans, 20 times more likely. And now, do we not have an admission, at least in parts, from the Home Office here, if they're having to teach men from different cultures not to rape children, is that an admission we're importing dangerous men?
Yeah, I think I'd probably demur to your two political commentators there in the studio, Martin, about this. I can see what both of them are trying to say, and I can see both sides of the argument. I'm a practitioner, I'm a law enforcement officer. And so for me, from my point of view, my concern is not so much giving out leaflets to migrants, particularly undocumented migrants, like this, telling them how to behave, but the fact that they are not detained, Martin, for long enough for the enforcement agencies to make a proper assessment as to whether or not they pose a risk to public health and public safety in this country. So if this was being handed out as part of the visa process, the permissions process, that this is the law of the UK, I get it. But if we are talking about people coming across in small boats, being given a leaflet like this, coming from cultures, as you say, where a lot of these things are rife, women and girls are treated very, very differently in many of the source countries, then I'm not sure that it's going to stop them doing the things that we see some of them doing. So my main concern is border security and admitting undocumented migrants who we don't know who they are, we don't know their background, we don't know their propensity to offend into the country and giving them temporary admission and then constantly having to come on your programme to explain to people how it was that this person got into the country in the first place and perpetrated this awful crime.
Tony, there are so many alarming and chilling bits in this literature. I'm taking this in real time, but here's something that really takes my breath away. It talks about not raping children. It talks about the age of consent. It talks about not stalking. It talks about harassment. It talks about don't assault people, as if you need to be told. But then it says, if you do any of these things, you could be arrested and go to prison, lose your accommodation and support, and it could affect your asylum claim. Tony, what reasonable person on earth needs to be told if you rape a child, you might not get, handouts from our government? It just seems to me to be a chilling admission. We've got a big, big problem.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying, Martin. And I can see why a lot of your viewers and listeners would say this is absolutely ridiculous that we've got officials publishing this sort of material that taxpayers are handing out to migrants. My concern is what impact do we think, what effect do we think it's going to have on the problems that we face of undocumented migrants? I'm not sure it will, because we only have 24 hours or 48 hours maximum to get them off a boat and through Manston and onto temporary admission because of the legal frameworks that we've set up regarding asylum and human rights applications. So the Border Force are under constant pressure to release people really, really quickly. And if they were allowed to talk to you, they would say to you, that's not long enough to do a thorough screening and examination, perhaps even get experts in to do a psychological assessment as to the danger this person might cause to the community, let alone whether he's admissible. The fact is that none of them are actually admissible. They're all illegal entrants. And my own view, as I've said to you many times before, is I would prefer to see no undocumented migrants admitted into this country at all, and that would eliminate the risk. But that would need major surgery to all of our legislation and a number of the international conventions that we're signatories to.
Tony Smith, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for responding to a breaking news story. I know it's not easy just to have a heavy story that's thrown at you and respond in real time. So thank you for your expertise as ever. Tony Smith there, former Director General of UK Border Force. Tony Smith. Just quickly back to the studio. Catherine Forster, we've been attempting to get comments from the Home Office. Any developments on that?
Well, nothing official, but we have been given to understand that fundamentally the view is that people who come to this country need to abide by our laws, and if they don't, there's obviously serious consequences. But this is about making it clear so that there can be no misunderstanding at all, laying this out in black and white to avoid any misunderstanding, therefore people doing terrible things and the consequences that flow through from that.
And we think that giving a how not to rape children guide to people coming here is almost like a health and safety document you give to people at work. If you lift the box, you hurt your back, and hey, we sent them a leaflet, so we can't. It throws up so many questions, so many horrific things. I think we need to try and address throughout the rest of the show in real time. I'll be covering this later on as well, at between 7 and 8. I'm sure Jubes and Co will as well. Just kind of smacked us between the eyes, this story. We'll have more reaction after the break to this incredible admission. The government seems to have published some kind of how not to rape women guide given to asylum seekers by the Home Office after a string of attacks, including rapes against children. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK. Oh, thank you.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. More reaction now to the breaking news story at the top of this hour. And again, just to warn you, I'm so sorry. There is some there's some disturbing content in this. I know you're just trying to enjoy your summer holidays. This is just serious news. We just have to talk about. It's a matter of national security. Asylum seekers, we're learning in this past half hour, have been given a disturbing guide by the Home Office on how not to rape women, including the age of consent, having sex with children, stalking, harassment, violence. It's being called a guide on how not to rape women. This, of course, follows a string of violent attacks where we've heard repeatedly asylum seekers, illegal immigrants maintain in court they thought it was normal in their country to have sex with children, and they actually use that as a defence. And maybe that's why this leaflet has been given out to people coming here. Catherine Forster, we were going to start at the top of this hour with the bombshell poll out today saying that 41%, beg your pardon, of Brits want to stand up to France more forcefully to try and stop those boats. I suspect after stories like this, that number is going to increase even more. At what point does the government, does the Home Office, does the establishment media, does the entire country just wake up to the fact we've got a serious problem with border security and I think approaching an emergency on women's safety?
Well, the government actually, Sir Keir Starmer's government promised to halve violence against women and girls within 10 years. I'm not quite clear what Andy Burnham's policy is on that, but I would imagine he would continue it. And obviously, when you've got many thousands of largely young men coming from cultures that are very different to us, we have seen in the horrific cases that we've had about British women and girls being attacked, that there clearly is a risk in having thousands of people coming across the channel, often without documentation. We don't have, as was being pointed out by that Lib Dem earlier, the information that the European Union has gathered on these people. So very often we know nothing about them. There is obviously a national security implication in that. And I remember being at a press conference with Sir Keir Starmer a year or so ago. It was about defence. But I said, are you failing to keep us safe in the English Channel? Now, of course, the vast majority of people coming across are not going to commit these terrible crimes, but the numbers are such that some are. And, you know, the Home Office's defence is we want to make it clear so there is no misunderstanding. But the fact that they feel a need to put this sort of literature out clearly demonstrates that they are acknowledging that there's a real problem here.
Nigel Nelson, one of the continual exasperations of this debate is that if you dare to raise the fact that there are cultural norms that are different between the types of countries, let's be honest, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Syria, Iraq, Iran, you know, let's be frank, a lot of these Islamic nations are run by totalitarian, brutal regimes like the Taliban in Afghanistan. It's utterly naive and I think dangerous and reprehensible of the woke left, the establishment media, the political class, to pretend that somehow the moment they step foot on British soil, they become westernised. They become enlightened to the ways of the West. This leaflet is proof that those people are part of the problem.
Well, I don't think for a start they become suddenly westernised by stepping ashore at Dover. Well, I mean, stepping ashore at Dover in the same way that we don't become easternised if we step off a plane in China or Japan.
How many Brits go on a rampage and rape in China? Well, and if they did, what would happen to them? You're comparing apples with pears.
Yeah, but
look at the problem on the plate in front of you now, Nigel. This is an admission we're importing rape culture. Surely it is.
No, what you're doing is you're telling people what the law of the land is, which seems to me a sensible precaution. Look, we have Japanese visitors here. The age of consent in Japan's 14.
And how many Japanese end up in British jails for sex crimes? Practically zero. It's the same across the entire continent of Europe. Japanese tourists are beautiful, law-abiding, high-taxpayer individuals. Again, look at the problem in front of you right now. This is third world rape culture, and this is an admission.
Well, hang on.
We've got a problem.
But you're almost suggesting that every migrant who comes into this country is a rapist, which is going too far.
No. Look at this leaflet. Why do you think it's been printed?
I think it's been printed so that people who come from cultures which are different from ours know exactly what British law is. You find some of those...
So you admit we have a grave difference of cultures from some of these cultures,
Absolutely.
Which is dangerous to British women.
We do.
There we go.
We do have different... Well, of course we have different cultures, and when we go abroad, we often go to another country with a different culture, whether the laws and the norms of daily life are completely different.
You're deflecting. Face the story that's in front of us. It's a leaflet that's been necessitated...
A leaflet telling people what the law in Britain is.
It's telling them not to rape, not to assault.
Of course it is.
Not to force yourself upon a child.
That's how we would bring up a child in Britain. You don't do this, you don't do that.
Because we have sensible, robust, Christian, respectful, law-abiding manners.
And the leaflet is also making clear that how women are treated in this country may be very different from how they're treated in Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Yemen, other Islamic countries. There's no harm in telling people what they should expect when they come here, whoever they are.
I just think this is one of those stories that just ties the left in knots. It completely blindsides the liberal left.
What's it got to do with left or right? I mean, what we're talking about here is... Well, what we're talking about here is giving people information when they arrive in this country.
Don't rape children. Don't assault people. Like you need to be told that. Surely, Nigel Nelson, that proves we're importing a huge, huge cultural problem. Nigel, you've got to leave it there. Catherine Forster, thank you very much for reacting to that story in real time. And again, apologies, they did contain some disturbing content. Now it's time for your traffic and travel updates. Don't forget to stick with us and stay safe.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A27 is closed after the M27 at Portsmouth, and the M27 is closed at Junction 2 in Romsey. In Scotland, the M74 southbound is partially blocked by a road traffic incident between junctions 21 and 22. Across Wales, the M4 eastbound from J33 Capel Llanilturn to J32 Corriton is congested with possible delays. And on the trains, Greater Anglia and Chiltern Railways are facing major disruption between Shenfield and Southend Victoria and between Aylesbury and Princes Risborough. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Very good evening to you. You're with GB News. Martin back shortly. First, though, the headlines. Police have named the 3 family members who died after getting into difficulty in the sea near Shoreham. Hassan Al-Kawas and his partner Zaina Al-Ain and their 14-year-old daughter Sarah Al-Kawas were pulled from the water on Tuesday. A younger girl from the family remains in critical condition. Andy Burnham is promising every rough sleeper the offer of a bed by Christmas. He's announced a total package of more than £440 million for emergency accommodation, but admits charities, councils and faith groups will need to pull together. The Conservatives have claimed households could save around £540 a year if net zero electricity rules are scrapped. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho says that the government should put cheaper power ahead of a grid dominated by wind and solar. That comes as higher gas bills have been pushing UK inflation now back up to 2.9%. That's the highest level for 4 months. The rise was widely expected, but the Office for National Statistics says the increase was driven by the sharpest rise in gas prices for almost 4 years. And an urgent manhunt's underway in Scotland after 2 men were found stabbed to death inside a flat in Glasgow. Paul Lafferty and Gary Beatson were discovered with serious injuries at a property on Sunday. Detectives believe a knife was used. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for the 6 o'clock news.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Further showers across more northern areas through the rest of today. A little bit brighter further south after quite a wet start to the day. That weather front from this morning has moved further south and east. Behind it, we've got further weather fronts that will bring more showery rain thanks to this area of low pressure through the rest of today and into Thursday as well. Some of these showers could bring some impacts because they bring a risk of thunderstorms with hail and lightning to parts of Northern Ireland and eastern Scotland, and later tonight into tomorrow morning across parts of North Wales and northern England. Elsewhere, there's a chance of a showery outbreak of rain overnight. Temperatures relatively mild for the time of year across more southern areas, a little bit fresher to start the day across the far north of Scotland in particular, because we've got quite a brisk northerly wind into Thursday morning, particularly across north and eastern coastal areas, so you will really notice that breeze. Further west, the winds will be a little bit lighter, but there's quite a lot of cloud to start the day on Thursday and further showers through the morning. Now through Thursday, not going to be quite as frequent across more northern areas, but through the morning across North Wales, northern England, that's where we'll see the most frequent and heaviest downpours. More southern and eastern areas of England will likely be fairly dry to start the day, but some of these showers could push further south and east into these areas later on by lunchtime and into the afternoon. Further north, a drier afternoon to come, some sunny spells breaking through for parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, but still a chance of a few showers as well. Widely a much cooler day on Thursday with more in the way of cloud around. Temperatures below average actually for more northern areas, quite close to average across the south. Showers will tend to ease into Thursday evening as we head towards Friday, as it will be a drier end to the week, and the weekend is looking relatively dry as well as high pressure builds in from the west once again. So more in the way of sunshine, less in the way of rain, but that might not last too long. Bye-bye.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Welcome Welcome back. Your time is 5:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, for a change of tone now, a shocking new social media trend that's being blamed for the deaths of 5 young men in Ireland last weekend. The teenagers died after the car in which they were travelling the wrong way down the motorway was involved in a head-on collision with another vehicle. A tragic event. We're now going to show footage of a separate incident where people are driving the wrong way down a motorway in Ireland. Look at this. It's just one of multiple videos I've posted on social media recently, which takes part in the trend. TikTok has been invited to appear before the Irish Assembly's Media Committee next month to address issues on how it deals with content that they believe glorifies illegal activity. It's an incredible trend, it's dangerous and it's costing lives, but is banning social media videos really the answer? I'm delighted now to be joined by the psychologist Emma Kenny. Emma, it's always a pleasure to have your company. Governments always seem to think the answer is to ban social media. Perhaps this is just stupidity. If you're going to drive down a motorway the wrong way, at that point, doesn't Darwinism kick in?
I think that TWOC and the whole environment of taking cars and then driving illegally has been something we've known for very many decades. I think it speaks more to the way a young person feels about themselves as a human being, their upbringing. Often it's to do with poor communities who have children who are not necessarily given the opportunities that other peers in other scenarios would be given. And that culminates in very low self-esteem, even though they don't think that. And they will put themselves at risk and others at risk because of that. The idea this is about a social contagion, and don't get me wrong, social media is powerful because obviously people get validation from it. When you have no validation in your life, it can actually matter that hundreds of thousands of people might see you do something that we consider insane, but that gives you that sense of value. That's the bigger question to ask. Why are young men doing things that put themselves and others in absolute danger? Because to risk your life for that moment speaks of something regarding your self-esteem, meaning that you don't have any.
Emma Kenny, I remember, there have always been these waves of scandal. Remember the hot hatchbacks, joyriders, the young lads nicking fast cars. That was in the 80s, 90s when I was growing up, and council estates, you could hear them roaring around. Young men always will do dangerous, irresponsible, crazy, and often, sometimes, sadly, tragically fatal things. But I just wonder, in terms of the politics of this, to constantly blame TikTok, Snapchat, whoever these other channels are that have been doing this, seems to be a convenient and short-sighted way of burying your head in the sand. How about addressing the fact that there's joblessness, there's boredom, there's dissatisfaction, there's social disengagement? Politicians maybe need to own a bit of that.
100%. And also the idea that we manage this situation by creating more big state, making decisions over your choices, that alleviates absolutely nothing. And in fact, the research that we're getting from places like Australia shows it makes no difference whatsoever. The reality is that children and young people want to be seen, valued, heard, validated. And for some of us, we're lucky enough, we get that through our parents, through our peer networks, from our school, from our education. But for many young people who are disenfranchised, marginalised, and maybe third or fourth generation unemployed and poverty-stricken, it's a completely different ballgame. And when it comes down to young men in particular, I think we have spun a narrative for decades now, and actually I would say majority to do with white young men in particular. They've been told that they are basically the scourge of society. And when you are reinforced with that value and belief system, believe me, over time, that becomes your narrative. And when you have that as a narrative, then why not risk yourself? Because no one really truly cares about you. Maybe your parents don't care about you. Maybe your friends don't really have a concern themselves because they're in the same space. Maybe no one cared about you at school. And so in the end, you just make decisions that say, well, maybe strangers can care about me online. And this isn't about government caring about those young men. This is about government wanting to police what everybody does in the UK. And we all know that. And that's really deceptive and unfair because we need to challenge the big issues. The big issues are young men in particular are growing up, and some young women with respect as well, feeling that there is no future for themselves, feeling there is no hope, feeling they don't have purpose, feeling that life isn't actually necessarily worth anything, value to them wise. And that's why they end up doing these horrendous things. I mean, obviously, the only sympathy we have in this circumstance, aside from what I've just said about the community experience and so many different fractured kids, is the people who get affected. That poor family who are now dealing with absolute horror because those boys made those choices. And also just to say, it's heartening for me to hear that the police, the Garda, didn't actually go after them. You know, they were going to do it right. They were going to put that sting out so that those boys were brought to a halt. But for me, the underlying question is the same as it was 3 decades ago. Why do young people put themselves at risk in this way? Because you ultimately have to have no respect or regard for your life. And until you have that, why on earth would you have regard or respect for anybody else's life? That's the question we need to tackle, and that they failed to tackle and continue to fail to tackle.
You know, Emma Kenny, every time I talk to you, I just find it so thoughtful and profound. I really do. Thank you, Emma Kenny, for being on the show tonight, darling. I appreciate your time. Psychologist Emma Kenny. Nigel Nelson, it's boredom, it's disenfranchisement, it's a taste for danger, but it's having tragic consequences now. 3 family members, 3 sisters and a 7-year-old boy were seriously injured in this calamity.
Yeah, and I think that you, me, Emma are going to pretty much agree on this, that this has been happening for years. This is nothing new. 1950s America, American teenagers played chicken by driving at speed towards the edge of a cliff to see who blinked first. So it's not social media that started this. All the reasons that Emma just gave are behind it. However, I also think it's right that social media should be made to take down film like that, which is an illegal act.
It's just incredible to me that anybody would ever get in a car and think it's a good idea to drive as fast as they possibly can. As you can see on your screens now, down a hard shoulder in the opposite direction to 30-ton trucks travelling at 70 miles an hour in the opposite direction. It just frightens me to actually to even watch it. Thank you to Emma Kenny. Thank you to Nigel Nelson. Always an absolute pleasure. Now, according to TikTok, they are proactively engaging with the Media Commission in Ireland. They are closely monitoring contents related to the incident at the weekend and are removing videos and accounts that break their rules. And they also remove content that depicts activities likely to be imitated, and that could cause significant physical harm, including risky driving. Now, there are similar videos on Instagram and on Snapchat, and we've reached out to those platforms and we'll bring you their replies as and when they get them. So, now it's time for your forecast. It's some of your top European destinations. I'll see you soon.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's not just the UK where we've seen a change in the weather this week, certainly much cooler across northern and central Europe, with some very lively thunderstorms in places. Now, there are some thunderstorms around on Thursday for eastern parts of Spain into the south of Iberia, for example. But the liveliest downpours and thunderstorms most likely northern Italy into the Alps, and especially around the Italian lakes, where there could be some very significant rain right there through this week and into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I might shock you because I do understand why there are people that perhaps will need to take this because of medical issues. I get that, urgent medical issues. But let's face it, this is actually the greedy goods pill. That's what this is. Do I think it will make people lazy in society? Common sense, of course it will. We all want the magic pill. The concern, of course, with the pill, I'm sure the pharmacists will agree, is the potential side effects of these pills. We need to take personal responsibility in the UK, and at the moment, when it comes to health and many other things, we don't.
Thorin, I could see you shaking your head a little bit there. What do you think?
Well, look, it's not a magic pill. It's a medical intervention for a complex condition. I think calling people lazy is just an easy thing to do because it assumes that people who are struggling with weight just need more motivation.
The People's Channel. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I'm thrilled to say now I'm joined by another World War II veteran.
In my judgment, the Mosquito was a better aircraft because it's got 2 Spitfire engines.
And you flew it all over Europe. You told me that you had a particularly memorable flight near Berlin. What happened there?
A shell came up underneath, and it lifted up the aircraft and it interfered for a brief period with the fuel supply. I didn't know. All I knew was I'd got the propellers were windmilling around and we hadn't any power. And eventually the power came on again, and I leaned across to Doug, my navigator. He was a Canadian, a wonderful bloke. And I said to him, you weren't frightened, were you, Doug? And he said, no, I wasn't frightened, I was bloody terrified.
GB News.
We're only here for like 12 hours. We're flying home at 11 o'clock tonight.
Oh. And mummy and daughter.
Yeah, and it only costs £70, so we thought, well, why not? Because it's cheaper than a supermarket shop.
Supermarket shop or spending the day in Benidorm with cheap booze.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a no-brainer.
And is there no chance you might just decide we're going to stay?
No, because my husband would kill me.
We did consider it because I said to my mum earlier on, we might just stay and miss the flight, but she's not up for it.
Has your husband actually visited Benidorm the Zone?
No, he hasn't. I've been here 27 times. That's my daughter's first time. She's a Benidorm virgin. But
well,
my husband's never been.
Not that he's told you anyway, let's put it like that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Donald Trump's media regulator is being sued by Disney. That's right, Disney and ABC are taking legal action in an attempt to block an early review of licences for 8 ABC stations. I'm delighted now to be joined by our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who, of course, is out there for us as our new megastar in DC. Disney versus Trump. Tell us all about it.
Yes, Mickey Mouse is really taking on the White House. But what is this all about? Well, there has been an enormous feud between Donald Trump and ABC, which, just to tell everyone in the United Kingdom, is one of the big 3 legacy networks in the United States. You've got ABC, NBC and CBS. And these are the big traditional broadcasters that use the airwaves to broadcast their content. And they're different to cable news channels like Fox News, CNN or MS Now, previously MSNBC. Now, those are sort of regulated in a different way, but those big 3 networks that go across the airwaves, they rely on government permission to operate because the government controls the spectrum through which they broadcast over those airwaves. And the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, that controls those licenses to access those airwaves. So that's a bit of background, but ultimately what has happened now is the FCC has told ABC, which was bought by Disney back in 1996, so Disney is the parent company of ABC, they've told 8 of those stations that they're going to have to review their licenses early. Now, this is all in the context of a massive, massive feud between ABC and Donald Trump, particularly Donald Trump pointing out that various shows on ABC, like Jimmy Kimmel and The View, have been discriminating in the view of Donald Trump against him and his wife. One remarkable incident earlier this year was when Jimmy Kimmel hosted what he called an alternative White House Correspondents' Dinner. And in that dinner, he delivered what he described as a joke, but Donald Trump did not take as a joke, where Kimmel said that Melania has a glow like an expectant widow. Now, Donald Trump, in response to that statement, took to Truth Social to say that it was a despicable call to violence. That is some of the context behind perhaps this more muscling in with ABC, but also, crucially, The View is a programme that is seen as very left-leaning, and it's exempt from various rules that would require equal time, or at least consideration, to various political candidates. They've had a number of Democratic guests on that programme. They refuse to take on Republicans, and given that it's a public broadcaster, they're required to have some balance. That's all part of the context.
Thank you very much indeed. Grace of the White House versus Mickey Mouse, of course. Tom Howard there. The Late Show live on GB News from midnight. Now, I'll be back at 7 p.m. Tonight. GB News Tonight got a fantastic exclusive on the Standards Committee. Who are the mysterious lay members who will decide the future of Nigel Farage? Find out at 7 p.m. Up next, Dawn Neeson on Tubes and Go.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Further showers across more northern areas through the rest of today. A little bit brighter further south after quite a wet start to the day. That weather front from this morning has moved further south and east. Behind it, we've got further weather fronts that will bring more showery rain thanks to this area of low pressure through the rest of today and into Thursday as well. Some of these showers could bring some impacts because they bring a risk of thunderstorms with hail and lightning to parts of Northern Ireland and eastern Scotland, and later tonight into tomorrow morning across parts of North Wales and northern England. Elsewhere, there's a chance of a showery outbreak of rain overnight. Temperatures relatively mild for the time of year across more southern areas, a little bit fresher to start the day across the far north of Scotland in particular, because we've got quite a brisk northerly wind into Thursday morning, particularly across north and eastern coastal areas, so you will really notice that breeze. Further west, the winds will be a little bit lighter, but there's quite a lot of cloud to start the day on Thursday and further showers through the morning. Now through Thursday, not going to be quite as frequent across more northern areas, but through the morning across North Wales, northern England, that's where we'll see the most frequent and heaviest downpours. More southern and eastern areas of England will likely be fairly dry to start the day, but some of these showers could push further south and east into these areas later on by lunchtime and into the afternoon. Further north, a drier afternoon to come, some sunny spells breaking through for parts of Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, but still a chance of a few showers as well. Widely a much cooler day on Thursday with more in the way of cloud around. Temperatures below average actually for more northern areas, quite close to average across the south. Showers will tend to ease into Thursday evening as we head towards Friday, as it will be a drier end to the week, and the weekend is looking relatively dry as well as high pressure builds in from the west once again. So more in the way of sunshine, less in the way of rain, but that might not last too long. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M27 westbound is closed between junctions 4 and 3 in Southampton West. The M2 eastbound has delays after a collision between junctions 2 and 3 in Rochester. In Scotland, the M74 southbound at junction 20 is partially blocked by a road traffic incident. Across Wales, the A470 northbound from Corryton to Taffs Well is congested with possible delays. And on the trains, Greater Anglia services are facing major disruption between Shenfield and Southend Victoria, while Chiltern Railway services are delayed between Aylesbury and Princes Risborough. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win over £65,000 in prizes. You could be our latest Great British Giveaway winner. First of all, we want to give you £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also receive a fine gold bar worth over £5,000.
For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is Tubes & Co and it's 6 o'clock. OK, we've got an amazing show coming up for you. The Home Office has issued a guide to asylum seekers outlining UK laws on sex, consent and gender equality. You won't believe what you're about to hear. Meanwhile, on a similar note, Portugal has approved a